I'm not a sappy, pour sugar on it sort of, I want to cry, but this is one of those, it's one of those things where you can actually play the piano music in the background and it tugs at the heartstrings. 30 for 30, forget the name of it. It's the New York Rangers. has to do with that 1994 championship.
I'll have to go check it out. Well, Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup Finals right now, right?
Florida and Edmonton.
Yeah. That's right.
So an opportunity for everybody to see McDavid do his thing on the national stage.
Exactly. Connor's a big boy, who, by the way, was an alum of a place that I worked in, Erie, Pennsylvania. He was a part of, I don't know, like the ECHL for Edmonton's minor league team. So I actually got to see him. I think he was like, before he blew up, he came and played a couple of warm-up games before he got to the NHL. It was pretty incredible. The guy is ridiculous. But that is Dan Devone. My name is Evan Giddings. Carter Chickering. Shout out to our YouTube chat filing in. Also on Twitch, all powered by First NorCal Credit Union. 888-957-9570.
Is that Carter's last name?
The Xfinity mobile text line. What?
Is that Carter's last name?
Yeah, Chickering.
It doesn't fit.
What are you talking about?
Dude, 6'8", bills. Chickering? It should be...
I was going to give you a 6'7", Carter.
Should I change it?
I mean, it should be Blutarski or something. You know, it's got to be.
Speaking of hockey, we got an enforcer behind the glass tonight. So everybody, be careful out there as you're rolling around, getting your Saturday set. Carter and I were out at the A's game yesterday, Dan. That's where we were team building. So I had a chance to see JJ Bleday's walk-off bomb.
Nice.
A little hazy at this point, but I do remember jubilation from the crowd.
All right.
That I do remember. There's energy.
Is that what you want to call it?
At the Coliseum.
A gathering?
Hey, easy. There was 15K last night. That for the Coliseum is
wow.
I got to tell you, that is quite a turnout. There was also a turnout in Texas where the Giants went down and beat Bruce Bochy's Texas Rangers in game 1 of that series. Gets on long later today at, I think, 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific Standard. You got Spencer Howard on the bump, Andrew Heaney, but they get the win last night behind Logan Webb, and they beat their old boy Boch.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun last night. Although, I don't know how many people still are familiar with Boch from the organization back in the day. I think we've changed face a couple of times. Maybe it was the announcers, the only people that really had any sort of relationship with Boch. But
I think Austin Slater might be the only player on the team that played.
He's back in center field today, as a matter of fact.
Yes. Yeah, he wasn't playing last night.
Yeah.
We can get into that, too.
Yeah. I just got to get the early shout out. Let Jimmy Jacket. For whatever reason, the last couple of weeks, I've been ignoring the 5-0.
You've been slacking,
We'll get to him early. But yeah, I don't know. Is that a good place to start? Where are you at? We haven't talked since Luis Matos got sent down. You talk about, player of the week, and then 2 weeks later, pack your bags and head back down to Saga Tomatoes.
Well, first things first, because we didn't have a chance to chat last weekend, I do have to apologize to you. I don't do this often, and it does tug at my heartstrings a little bit.
You don't do it often? We're going to change your name to You're Right, Dan.
No.
That's basically what this is going to do.
No.
You're Right, Dan, and 100% is what they ought to call me. Go ahead.
Dan almost Devone. Because, and I got to give you love, because I came down Anthony Volpe's road a couple weeks ago, not having watched much. I was talking out of my keister. The guy had the biggest hit, in my opinion, of that 4-run ninth inning against Camilo Doval last Sunday in the finale of the sweep against the New York Yankees. So I got to give it up to your boy. Little Anthony Volpe was very nice and has continued to play extremely well this weekend. Something that the Giants are still looking for from their shortstop. It doesn't matter if it's been Schmidt, Luciano, Wisely, and now the latest guy in the ire, kind of in the bullseye of those young, I don't know, up back and forth players is Luis Matos. I mean, it doesn't feel like the Giants. I think the Giants are not as bad as they played during their, say, 6-game losing streak. I'm also not sure they were as good as people were hoisting them up into when they went, I don't know, 11-13 or 11-3 out of 14 games.
Yeah, and so what does that make them? It's a 500 team.
Which is, well, right now they're 2 games below 500, but yeah.
Right, hovering right around meh.
Wild card team, Dan.
Well, it's sort of, this year because the National League is so weak, but that's basically who they are. They're very, it's been a lot more feast or famine this year. They're so bad, and then, of course, they lose 6, and then they go on that road trip where they were in Pittsburgh and New York and come back and take 2 of 3 of Philadelphia, and you're back on that bandwagon. But at the end of the day, it's pretty much you're looking at 81 up and 81 down, much like that of a year ago. It's beginning to smell a lot like 500. Now, I personally believe that this is a team that still has, I think, another gear that they can put things into. I still believe in sort of that younger core. The big question now has become what sort of evolved since the last time we spoke, and is that I think the pitching has become the Achilles heel, and namely that starting pitching was a good place to start, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Logan Webb was fantastic last night, but you're right.
Once you get past him.
Yeah, I mean, the starting pitching outside of him, Jordan Hicks, I think, is finally starting to come back down to earth as a guy who's never started before in the show. He was a starting pitcher in the Cardinals system, but is a guy that's now finally getting stretched out and has not even I believe, gone past 5 more than once or twice this season anyway, so he was never somebody that's going to eat a ton of innings. You're running into injuries right and left, both in the position player as well as pitching category. So, I think the Giants at the beginning of this week, Dan, had 13 on the IL, which was most in the major leagues, which does make it difficult to evaluate this team. But that's why, in a way, if this group can hover around 500, I do see that as somewhat of a minor win. The thing about the young kids, and it's interesting because I heard a lot about wanting to empower the youth, and we've heard that for the Golden State Warriors. We've heard it a little bit for the Niners in regards to their quarterback position. But with the Giants, I know that everyone is clamoring for these kids, and I would like to see more of them too. I think Heliot Ramos is here to stay for sure. Matos needs some work, but I'd like to see it done in the show. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. The direction that I get from the front office is that the veterans are going to determine the path of their season. And the front office is going to do everything in their power to give the reins to veteran players. That means that I think we're going to be pissed off a lot this season as fans watching these young guys not be allowed to struggle. Like the first thing that popped into my mind, Dan, when I saw Luis Matos get optioned down to AAA was he's Moses Moody. Like he's Moses Moody. If he has one bad game or one bad stretch, he's just going to get sent back to the bench. It doesn't matter what he does. He could score 20 points. He could go 3 for 4. He won NL Player of the Week for crying out loud the same week that Aaron Judge won it on the American League side. He went from that player back to playing in Sacramento. That, to me, dictates a direction from the front office that the young players are nice pieces, but they're not the focal point, or this team is not built for them to be the focal point.
Well, I think what you read into that, or what does that say? It's that you're seeing the sort of pressure that I think Farhan is under. That I think if Farhan was in his first or second year, maybe, you give the kids an opportunity. I think what Farhan and the front office are telling you that I don't have that luxury anymore, that I've got to win today. That there is a bullseye on my back. I recognize that. Call it the hot seat, call it whatever it is that you want. But I think you're seeing the pressure of him needing to produce victories today rather than tomorrow. He's not looking to build for the future. His future is right now simply because he's on year 6 of this project. So I think it's a blatant way of Farhan saying, yeah, I'm feeling the pressure. I got no time for kids to make mistakes at this level. In the case of Luis Matos, I would say that it's clear that this guy needs one thing to work on, and that is his approach at the plate. He's offering it pitches early in the count. It's just he's not far away. Heliot Ramos was the same way just a year ago, 2 years ago. You can clearly see that, the athleticism and all of that tease that we got from him is legitimate. It kind of reminds me of Jonathan Kuminga. Jonathan Kuminga was so sped up early on in the first couple of years of his career, and then getting reps, he was able to slow things down and be the Jonathan Kuminga we witnessed at the end of or towards the middle in the latter part of last season. But I think Matos is close. He just needs to get reps, and it's going to happen at the minor league system. Now, you couldn't opt out Yastrzemski simply because he's out of options. So I think the thinking was there, look, he's not far away, but we need him to work on one thing, and that's his approach at the plate, and go down and do that consistently in Sacramento. But I think the bigger story is that the bigger storyline there is that, it's Farhan saying that I've run out of time and that I cannot afford Matos to learn on my dime because I've got to win yesterday.
And yesterday they did win because of their veteran players. Wilmer Flores hit 2 homers following his grand slam from 2 days ago down in the desert. You have Michael Conforto, who had his first home run back off the IL. Looked, I think, a little overmatched his first few games. I think it was 1 for 12 going into that at-bat. Turns around a fastball, hits the go-ahead home run. The Giants win 5-2 and take game 1 of the series against Texas. All that as well. But when you talk about Farhan and making a choice like sending Luis Matos down, the only issue that I have with it is it doesn't feel like a move that has any sort of, I guess, understanding of the human side of the game. Like, to me, it is a cold, hard, calculated move where basically these players are being told by the actions of Farhan Zaidi, in this case Luis Matos, that they're just a piece. Like that they're just a statistic, that they are just a number on his spreadsheet. that is going to be interchangeably moved up and down no matter what your performance, no matter how you're feeling. And I don't know if the kid is crushed. I don't know if he's feeling like, okay, this is a great opportunity for me to go back down and work on what I got to do, and I got to embrace this. I'm not sure how Luis Matos is feeling. But when I see that kind of move for a player like Austin Slater, nonetheless, who comes back and he's still hitting 140. I know he's been with the team for 9 years. I don't think he's a horrible baseball player, but I don't think he's somebody that should stand in the way of a Luis Matos, because I think that's a player that if you can work with the growing pains, and you're working with the growing pains of Austin Slater anyways, Matos has the ability to help you win down the line, or even in just a couple of weeks if he finds a stroke at the plate, because I think what he gives you defensively is an asset in center field. I think it also makes it a little more difficult now for Bob Melvin to manage the moving parts in center field, because some days you're going to have Slater out there. Some days you're going to have to move Yaz into center field. Where does that leave Matos? Conforto? Is Soler going to be the DH? And once Lamont comes back, that means Flores is relegated to the bench. Like, there's all these kind of moving parts for the Giants right now, and a lot of them are stagnant. So I guess I would like to see Farhan Zaidi, or this front office, who I believe is the one, honestly, that makes the lineup card most days. I would like to see them start looking at these players not just as chess pieces, but also as people, because when you send down Matos after just a couple of weeks of bad baseball, I think it can also signal to the rest of the team that, okay, as long as you're productive, well, then there's a place for you. But if you're going to struggle for a couple of weeks, which is inevitably going to happen in the game of baseball, well, then we're going to have to make quick and drastic choices. And that's something that I don't necessarily like to see, because I don't think it demonstrates a level of trust that's requisite, or that you need in order to play winning baseball.
Well, I think it's welcome to, professional sports. Sort of, that's the way I read it. I think that it depends. I think it goes from player to player. Would the same hold true if Elliot Ramos was to go in the tank? I don't know if that's necessarily true, because his body of work is we've seen a little bit more of it. It's been a little bit more consistent.
I think the choice was between those two. Like, if Matos was hitting the way that Ramos is and vice versa, I think Ramos would have been sent down. I think it was just a numbers game, and one of those two guys was going to be the odd man out.
But when you say sent down, it's not as though we're not going to see him again. He needed work. So partially I'm with you, and I don't typically say this in terms of my quote-unquote takes, but I can go either way. If the guys that I defer to, meaning that hitting instructors, meaning that Bob Melvin, the people who've been around this sport forever, and rest assured, it's not Farhan making this decision exclusively on his own behalf, but he's consulting with others. And if they feel as though this guy needs to go down and work on X, Y, and Z, and we know exactly what it is that he needs to do, let's send him down to Sacramento so that he can get the work consistently. I want this guy getting 4 bats a game and playing against consistent pitching every single night so that he can work on exactly what it is that we've instructed him to do. And if that's the case, then we'll see him back up here. I don't think it's an indictment on his career. I mean, it's not as though you're not going to see Luis Matos again. I think that there was a sense of, look, the guy hadn't had an extra base hit in over 3 weeks. He was clearly in an epic slump. And so for a team that's trying to tread water and make a run at a wild card or be respectable this year, they felt as though it's time to send him down. We're going to yo-yo this kid. It might be a blow to his confidence, but hey, welcome to professional baseball, especially on a competing baseball team. So I think that's the way I read it. And I think there's just, not that Slater's much more of an upgrade, I hear you, but there is a sense of confidence in that he knows, at least the moment isn't too big for somebody like that of an Austin Slater or a Mike Yastrzemski, as much as they might struggle. And when you look at the numbers, Matos might have better numbers in terms of strikeout and right across the board. And but I think that at the end of the day, there's just a sense of confidence that if I get into a late inning game and I have Austin Slater at the plate as opposed to Luis Matos, a struggling Luis Matos, I'm a little bit more comfortable that Slater knows what to do in that instance.
Well, I do agree with that. Like, at some point you need, I guess, a fourth outfielder or an option to come off the bench and particularly face lefties. Like, Yaz is eventually going to come up late in games, and you're going to need somebody to pinch hit for him that can actually get a base hit off a southpaw. That's going to be necessary, and that to me is Austin Slater's role at this point. I guess I'm just a little frustrated also, Dan, with I think when Luis Matos took a turn for the worse was around the time that they moved him to the leadoff spot. And I don't think he particularly profiles right now as a leadoff hitter because of what you talked about, his play discipline. He's a little all over the place. Being able to hit every pitch sometimes is a blessing as well as a curse, because if you can hit anything and you can get to any ball, well, that also means you're less incentivized to take a ball. It also means you're less incentivized to take a walk. And that's something Luis Matos right now cannot do. He doesn't strike out a ton. He also doesn't walk. That to me is not a leadoff hitter. That's a player that I think should be hitting 5 or lower. And that's also where he was most successful when he was turning around pitches, when he was winning NL Players of the Week. That's when Luis Matos was at his best. So in a way, I'm not saying they set him up for failure, but when Jung-Hoo Lee went down, I just felt like it was an open season for the leadoff spot. Anybody that's hot can go hit leadoff, especially if Lamont Wade is hurt. We got to figure out a 2-hole. That means that Jorge Soler, for crying out loud, was hitting leadoff in a couple games for the Giants. That shouldn't happen either. But when Luis Matos moved to the leadoff spot, that's when he started to slump, because I just don't think he was set up to be successful the way he is currently. So yes, there are things he needs to work on, and maybe that's where he's going to Sacramento, and they want him to be more patient at the plate. They want him to, draw deeper at-bats, to have more quality, lengthy at-bats, because they need him eventually as a leadoff guy. But I just feel like in addition to them pulling the rug from out under him, he was only struggling in that position because they put him there. And that, again, is a move, to me, by Farhan that is a little more just calculated and not understanding of what you actually have.
Well, I don't know, again, if it's just exclusively Farhan. When it comes to a lineup, Bob Melvin has some culpability in this as well.
Sure, but I also think, I think nowadays most general managers are like,
no, that's true.
Like Aaron Boone doesn't make the lineup in New York.
Yeah, that's true. But I think that when it comes to Luis Matos, I think just he's better served getting his confidence back at the minor league system, and we'll see him again. I like to think of this as just being a temporary stint. And while, it's a blow, certainly when you think about where he was at just 2 weeks ago, but the bigger picture here is just the construction of a young athlete, whether it's football, baseball, or basketball. That's what we're thinking long term here. We're thinking about this guy potentially being a corner outfielder on your team for years to come. So while we live in the here and now, I think that the Giants have to think about this guy long term and think about Luis Matos, not necessarily against the Texas Rangers in a weekend series, but where is Luis Matos going to be a month from now, or where's he going to be a year from now? Because he is a guy that I think you can clearly see that with the athleticism and with that brief glimpse that he showed everybody, that he can carry a baseball team. And so with that, you just want to make sure that what it is that you're doing right now pays dividends. And sometimes you have to nurture these guys. It can be a little bit frustrating, but you can't expedite the process, I guess is what I'm saying. And there'll be, I understand if you were to take the temperature of the fan base and people here at 95.7 The Game, it's like, I don't want to see Austin Slade. I want to see Luis Matos. But again, I think that their perspective might be a little bit different in terms of this being sort of a longer-term play.
This is Saturdays on 95.7 The Game. That's Dan Devone. My name is Evan Giddings, Carter Chickering behind the glass, rocking with you on a Saturday from 9 to noon, talking about the San Francisco Giants right now. Won 5-2 yesterday against Bruce Bochy and the Texas Rangers. I know they didn't have Seager. They're a little bit banged up as well, and they've been, I think, hovering below 500 for much of this season also. But it was interesting watching and seeing Bob Melvin on the Giants side, Bruce Bochy on the Rangers side. Because I don't know about you, Dan. I always viewed them as similar managers. Like Bruce Bochy is undoubtedly and will always be measured as a better manager than Bob Melvin. He's one of few that has 4 World Series rings. He is a master of his craft. But in a way, I feel like maybe it's just seeing them together. Former catchers, former backups, longtime big leaguers, have been in the game for 40 years. I do feel like there's a similar disposition about them. And kind of watching the game yesterday, the way that they were, maneuvering, having to use Bob Melvin less so, but their bullpen, I don't know. It just kind of got me thinking about where the Giants used to be with Bochy and why Melvin's in the saddle right now. It feels like I don't know if they're trying to tap into that a little more, but there is something about the old school manager that maybe just because of Kapler being here the last couple of years, I do feel like this town and personally my own life for watching baseball has just been missing.
I agree with you. The one thing about Bob Melvin, and I know you're a Bob Melvin fan because going back to your days with the Oakland A's, and
I think he's better than people give him credit for.
Yeah, no, he is. He's a good manager. I just never get the guy. Like, I can understand Bochy. He's lovable. Gabe Kapler was divisive. I was a Gabe Kapler guy. I liked Gabe Kapler.
By the way, have you seen him on TikTok?
No.
Gabe Kapler is a TikTok star now.
Oh, no.
His last video was him, what was it, Carter? He was just putting on a tuxedo. It was him just basically dressing up with a bow tie and all black, with the Gabe Kapler smolder with that finely cut beard, looking like a model heading out to his assistant general manager job. There is not a man who is more built for Miami than Gabe Kapler.
Is that where he is?
Yeah, because of the Marlins.
Oh, no. Well, listen, but Gabe Kapler is who he is. Love him or hate him. He's a musician. The guy is like, I would see him at the farmer's market. One of the reasons why I tried to recruit him to come swim in the bay. But
you guys both go to the Dolphin Club?
He wouldn't do it. But I appreciate someone who's that's who he is, and he's always been divisive. There are people the minute he walked into the room are like, dude, I am out on this guy. Are you kidding me? This is San Francisco. Where's Bochy and the Ponch? And a middle-aged man that was just lovable. Now we got this guy who's having middle life crisis. Driving a Corvette with the top down with less than 8% body fat. And like, what are you trying to do here? But he was who he was. The thing with Bob Melvin, which I've never understood, just from a personal standpoint, like, dude, like who the hell are you? You know what he reminds me of? He reminds me of James Bond. Like that old joke with James Bond. Like, James Bond, you're
like Sean Connery?
No, not necessarily the specific actor, but just James Bond. You're a man of intrigue, an international spy. You're surrounded by beautiful women and fast cars. Could you smile? I mean, when's the last time you saw James Bond just crack a smile? My thing with Bob Melvin is like, brother, I can't tell you the last time I saw the guy smile. I mean, I've never been able to get my arms around that dude.
Yeah, it's probably, I want to say Daniel Craig has smiled probably one time in 5 James Bond movies. Timothy Dalton was a little more of a smiler. Pierce Brosnan would always, you could see some teeth every once in a while. I mean, for crying out loud, he had Halle Berry in one of the movies.
Roger Moore smiled too much.
He was the original, right?
Roger Moore was the original.
Sean Connery was the original.
Really? I thought
he was the first Bond. Sean Connery was.
Are we sure about that?
I would look that up.
Bet every last penny I have on that.
All right,
we got to do some research in the break. These are the hard facts that we need to uncover here on Saturdays on 95.7 The Game. Evan Giddings and Dan Devone.
The $34.62 in his bank account.
Yeah, we're going to get back into Dan's comp for James Bond on the other side. There's also something that's been leaking out, I think, slowly from 49ers minicamp in regards to Brandon Aiyuk that I find fascinating. We haven't had a chance also to discuss Christian McCaffrey's record-setting deal, what that might do for the running back market, what that might do for the 49ers. And then finally, there's also some Warriors updates. There was a report earlier this week about Klay Thompson that for some fans might be good, for others might be emotionally a little bit hard to handle. So we're going to get into all of that as we continue on here on 95.7 The Game. Evan Giddings and Dan Devone, hit that phone line. 888-957-9570 is the number one with you until noon here on 95.7 The Game.
Free is key during Craftsman Days at Lowe's. Right now, get one free Select V20 tool when you buy a Select Battery 2-pack. Plus, get your choice of a V20 drill.
Send me a text message because you know you don't exist.
I will say, any place that calls themselves university, high school,
That's right.
those are two separate things. Those are two separate levels of education. It does indicate a little bit about you.
There's a little bit of arrogance behind all of that.
Evan Giddings, Dan Devone, Saturdays here on 95.7 The Game. I promise we're going to get back to sports talk in a moment. Oh, shout out to the 415. I went to university and I am listening.
I need some proof. Who was your history teacher? And you got 5 seconds to text me back.
It does seem like a school that you would call the teacher by their first name. Like it's one of those schools. Like
Well,
you have
the
an
classes
actual
are much more
friendly
intimate.
relationship.
Yeah, I mean the
Like we're going
classes.
to piss off half the city.
No,
by the end of this show.
But there's an intimacy there because there's only a few people. First of all, it's expensive, and also it's difficult to get into. So the
One of
class
those 4-to-1 student to teacher ratios.
yeah, which is the way you want to do things.
Do they call them professors because it's a university?
No.
Oh.
No. These are just be a little bit odd, but when it like, excuse me, Mark. I've got a question. Calling a teacher by their first name.
Oh, we got a couple. Yeah, we got Lick Wilmerding in the house. Apparently, they whooped on Stewart Hall. Shout out to the 415. Shout out Liz Brown from Stewart Hall, also for the 415. And we actually have our first call of the day, Dan. Zach in San Francisco wants to talk about this very subject, the private schools in the city of San Francisco. Zach, welcome to the program. How are you?
Hey, man, how you doing?
Fantastic.
Yeah, I went to Lick Wilmerding, man. Graduated in '82.
Oh, attaboy. A real one.
When it was one building, and when my class had like 19 people.
And Lick Wilmerding is located where? You're sort of like, I want to say,
It's like Glen Park?
downtown, outskirts downtown.
Way down.
No, we're on Ocean, right across the street from City Hall, City College.
Oh, yeah, same thing. Oh, so
Yeah. Yeah.
You're all so
Yeah,
you're out
it was
there by
cool, though.
Reardon. Yeah, okay, I got some knowledge.
Yeah,
for
right
you.
down the street from Reardon. Yep.
Okay, so if you were back in the day and you were hanging out on Ocean, do you have any knowledge of Beeps Burgers? Are you familiar with Beeps?
Man, I just went there the other night.
Oh, my God.
I still live in the city.
Guys, come on down here. I'm going to give you a big old hug, my man. Keep going. What do you got?
No, I'm just commenting on the schools, man. Yeah, we used to play University. University was kind of like our main competitor in our division. But, yeah, we had good times back then.
Yeah, I'm surprised that University is sort of the powerhouse. I would think Stewart Hall, in honesty, Carter, would be sort of a little bit better than University. Am I not mistaken by saying that universities, their enrollments got to be a little bit smaller than the other schools?
Probably.
I think they're all kind of relatively the same.
Well, apparently
size.
this guy went to a high school with one building, so I imagine you can't fit too many people in there. I had a couple of friends that went to Lick. See, this is the thing, and I'm just gaining knowledge at this point because I'm in the deep end right now. I don't know much about San Francisco high school culture. I can tell you a lot about the East Bay, but SF, see, once we get across the bridge, dude, it's foreign territory out here.
Yeah, well, I'm the same way. They just don't put me in a bridge and tunnel because I have no idea where the hell I am.
Well, you live over by the tunnel tops.
Wow, that's good knowledge.
Shout out to the Presidio.
Wow, have you been up there?
Yeah, man.
Oh, my God.
It's like one of the best date spots, I got to say.
Oh, okay. Obviously. Yeah.
By the way,
listen,
you would have been, I promise we're going to get back to sports in a moment.
no more. I don't want to hear about your date spots.
No, but I was going to say, you would be proud
Before
of
you
me
know,
this
we're
week.
playing the love songs.
I went swimming in the Pacific Ocean like
Did
3
you
times this
really?
week. You would be proud of me.
So the Pacific Ocean, where? Were you in Southern California?
No, I was at Ocean Beach.
Oh,
and
wow.
I went down to Pacifica a couple
Wow,
times.
okay.
I was hot this week. I know you're in New York and
That's a real
you're
deal.
off staring
That's a
over the
real
top
deal.
of Central Park
when
and
you
whatnot.
say swim, you went for a plunge, ankle deep. What were you doing?
Full head in, plunge.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's not
I-
as though you were swimming for an extended period of time.
Well, no, because you got to be worried about the rip tides and strong currents and whatnot. It's probably easier to swim over on this side down by the marina, right? Over here in the bay.
Well, yeah, or the Cove. I don't know why you want to go out to Pacifica and deal with any of that when I'm inviting you down to the Cove where you can just swim, and it's basically...
You invite me a lot of places, and I don't know if it's just that I don't follow up on them or that it's just kind of a one-off, but...
We will get out and do something with where I can show off my athletic prowess just to sort of end all of this. And you'll understand why I don't show up at these company events because it's just no fun. So they go, well, Dan's here and he's going to rip one over everybody's head. And I'm like, what fun is this? You want the guy who's going to like dribble one at the third base and we all laugh and, look at the chubby guy, trip over himself and let's have a beer. Like, that's not me. I lace him up and I play for real. And I'm just not fun to play with in any sport.
You're the guy that shows up to a softball company game in metal spikes. Like he's the modern day Ty Cobb.
Softball guy.
He's just sitting there on the side with
eye black.
Shout out Sam Levin.
Sharpening his spikes, ready to go in foot first.
Softball guy.
That's how you break up a double
3
play.
bags.
Honestly, though, we did miss you out there on Friday. Carter was there representing.
How's Carter?
Well, you didn't stick around for BP, Carter, or for the actual game, I should say.
Yeah, I had to go to a birthday party. I had to leave early, so
Yeah.
He's actually popular, so
Well, he's. I think Carter
Stuart Hall kid.
is one of those guys that. By the way, King Kong Carter goes at 6'8", 300 pounds, and played collegiate basketball. So I think he's one of those guys that he's probably the quietest guy in the room, but if he stepped to the plate, you'd be like, holy crap, this dude's got it together. Either that or he's a complete wimp. I don't know. Hopefully it's not the latter.
It's one or the
you
other.
got some game, right?
Power, power forward.
I got some game.
No, he played collegiately. Shout out Endicott.
Endicott.
Yeah.
Attaboy.
Oh yeah, little basketball.
Attaboy. So what we got? Well, actually, in that case, we have 2 collegiate athletes here.
D3 Ev.
Yep. Who's the odd man out? D'Anthony Volpe. I do love that name, I got to say.
All right, man.
But no, I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah, but no, I didn't play. Intramurals, brother.
No, well, according to Steiny, you had some mean game on the streets.
Yeah, so I heard that, and you kept building me up, and I hadn't seen.
He was building you up.
Well, yeah, I kept hearing through third parties that, I hear you got game. Steiny says you got game. And so the first time, because I hadn't done a show or seen Steiny, and we were here doing a show. We were in the what do you call it before the
crossover?
The crossover. And so somebody brought it up. I'm like, oh, Dan's here. You play with Dan. How was Dan? He's like, and he completely qualified it and said, yeah, he was a nice little player. Like, what?
That might be the biggest sign of respect from Matt Steinmetz around. So
that's disrespecting my
nice little player.
Nice little player.
He also called Steph Curry a nice little player. So should take that as a sign of respect. You know who has the ultimate sign of respect, Dan? And we were talking about him before we got into the James Bond comparisons and all the rest about San Francisco public and private, I should say, high schools. It's Bruce Bochy. He's got the respect of everybody in this town. And I'm just curious, like when I say Bruce Bochy, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Yeah, I think respect. I think it's rapport. I think it's not that he's a tactician. It's just that he hits that sweet spot. Now, obviously, this is more than one word, but he's one of those guys that I think his success, and I think the success of the majority of coaches these days, is that can today's player respect you? And that's, do they want to play for you? Can you create and cultivate the proper energy and the proper culture within a franchise and or a team? And no one did it better than him. He was just someone that you enjoyed playing for. And at the end of the day, when you're talking about today's athlete in 2024, that's being a good coach in my estimation. And he did that as well as anybody.
Yeah, I think for me, the managerial spot in baseball, it might be the most important or influential of all the big, head coaches or kind of the decision makers in the major American sports. I guess I can't speak so much to soccer because I don't have that kind of knowledge, but a manager in baseball pushes so many buttons throughout a game that I think if you're a bad one, it's a little easier to cover up if you're a bad coach in other sports. Like eventually you're going to get found out and exposed. But if you're a bad coach on a great team, like for example, in the NBA Finals, I don't think Joe Mazzulla is a great coach. He coaches a great team, and I think they're going to win the NBA Finals. But I don't think Joe Mazzulla is a top half of the league coach. If you're a top half of the league manager, I do think you can have more influence. Or if you're a bottom half of the league manager, you can also hurt your team a little more than, say, in a sport like basketball. So I think with Bochy, he's always been, like, I think he's been the same guy he's been in San Francisco as he was in San Diego before he got to the Giants. And I just think he's steady, man. Like when I think of Bruce Bochy, I think of a steady, obviously, imposing, large presence.
Strength is?
His biggest strength is his ability to figure out when to use his gut and when to use the numbers. Like that's a needle that not many men, in my opinion, can thread. Because when you have somebody that understands, say, we'll just use analytics as a broad term, but understands, okay, how to put players in successful positions, and we do it in baseball a lot with statistics, you understand what players operate in certain spots. But you also have to have a guttural feeling for a situation. Like, I don't think it's a gut check move for Bruce Bochy to go to Javier Lopez against Bryce Harper because he knows left on left that guy gets anybody out any time of day. But it is a gut check move to say to leave Javier Lopez in after Harper, knowing that Adam LaRoche is 2 men down the line and we got to get him out. But before we get to him, I have to trust my guy to go get 2 righties out. That to me is where the gut feeling for Bochy is different than just about any manager left standing in the game today. Being able to differentiate those situations, I think, is impossible. Like, that's what separates him in my mind. So as far as his biggest strength, I think it's feel. Honestly, feel is Bochy's biggest strength.
No, that's a good point. Although that feel sort of departed him in the playoffs against the Chicago Cubs. I think he got too much into the numbers there. But that's a lost art. I always talk about this, that when you go out to the mound and you're going to make a pitching change, don't simply have it based on a pitch count or have it framed that it's set up for my setup guy and then I can get it to the 9th inning, give it to Camilo Duvall. Just go out there with Logan Webb a couple of weeks back, and I'm referring to Bob Melvin. And I think one of a manager's duties is to go out and look into the guy's eyes, man, and just see if he's got any bulldog left in him, or just have that conversation and assess the decision at that point. A lot of these things are premeditated. As a manager, it's human interaction at the end of the day. Somebody said authenticity when it comes to Bruce Bochy. That's a great word. Bruce Bochy was authentic. And a lot of that, I think, lends itself to what it is that I'm saying, that part of the lost art is the interpersonal sort of relationship that they have. And to take it a step further, as far as your lineup card or making decisions and switches throughout the course of the game, don't always have to be dictated by a template or by a tablet or by, quote unquote, the numbers.
No, but I also think that's why someone like Bochy can work in a place like Texas and Bob Melvin couldn't work in a place like San Diego. And I do wonder sometimes with the decisions we've talked about as far as Matos getting optioned, the lineup being constantly rearranged. Some of that is because of a lack of productivity and Melvin searching for answers. I also think it's because of the way that baseball is kind of managed from above now. Like, it's not just so, like, the manager's not the only person that writes the lineup card or is not the person who decides every spot 1 through 9. He might be given parameters to operate with. Like, I've seen certain managers that have, okay, this guy can only hit 1 through 3, or this guy is only allowed to hit in the bottom 4 spots in the order. So then it's up to the manager to choose where he's hitting 6 through 9. But it does, if he wants to hit him leadoff, like, he can't do that. And so I think there is, and I've seen a little tug and pull between, say, Melvin and what I believe to be Farhan trying to put his fingerprints on this team. And some of it's because of injury. Some of it's because the veterans haven't played very well. But I guess when I think of Bruce Bochy, I think of someone that has just an unequivocal respect from the top down that he is going to be the one in charge of his team. Like, when I think of the Texas Rangers and I think of the decisions that are made as far as the lineup, the situations, the staff, the rotation, the bullpen, all of that to me screams Bruce Bochy. Sometimes when I see the Giants play, and I think it's a little bit of the residue that was left from the last couple of seasons, but it does still feel like Farhan's team to an extent, and Bob Melvin is just kind of sprinkling in his flair on top. I don't know if you read it that way.
I think that's a good assessment. I think that what this boils down to is that there is still, as much as we try and change it, especially when it comes to baseball with the sabermetrics and the analytics, that this is still about people, right? There's the human element as much as we try and squash it in every professional sport. I'll take it a step further. The Angel Hernandez sign off, I wasn't down with that. I wasn't down with that at all. I know that Angel Hernandez was not good, but there were a lot of people that I respect, and I guess what I'm trying to stay here with this connective tissue is that, look, unless you want to replace that human element by having robotic umpires, well, go for it, but you lose a lot, I think. But the Angel Hernandez, and I know that I'm sort of switching gears here, but I'm not into dancing on someone's grave. And there were a lot of people that I respected. Rich Eisen, I heard him go off an entire segment on his show about he's so glad that the worst umpire in the history of the sport was gone. We just...
Wow, dude.
Yeah, I don't know. That bothers me. That I think that a lot of it was just because it went viral and it became an entity, that a lot of it just got blown out of proportion when he made a mistake, which every umpire does. It was something that we sort of gravitated to and magnified simply because it was Angel Hernandez. I know this has nothing to do with Bros Bochy, but I'm just telling you that I don't know. I think all of us should feel a little ashamed because we're, especially in the media, if you're a fan, go for it, man. That's what, fan, I always remind people, is an acronym of the word fanatic. You're not logical people. Go nuts. You suck. Get the hell out of here. Yeah, no, seriously. That's what fans should never change. But in terms of the media, we're too much into ripping people down. Like we don't have to live there. We don't have to simply dance on the dude's grave and ride him out to an early retirement saying, yeah, he's gone. Like this idea of trying to tear people down from a media standpoint, I'm not down with it, man. And there was a lot of that this past week with Angel Hernandez.
Well, a week ago, I was getting ready to rip Anthony Volpe, but he wouldn't let me do it. I mean, he played too well in that series, so I got to give him his respect. Anthony?
Oh, no. There's somebody else out from the East Coast that we may somehow, it may work its way in today's conversation that I am telling you has ties to my old man who's from Newark, New Jersey. Jersey Ken's not here. And it's St. Benedict High School where my old man went to.
Put some respect on it.
Do you know who went to St. Benedict and coached there for nearly 10 years?
Is that Dan Hurley?
Danny Hurley, ladies and gentlemen.
God.
And he better not go to them damn Lakers.
We will get to him. In fact, I might rip him by the time. Actually, I'm not going to rip him. Well, I do have a local angle.
I dare you to even go there.
I have a local angle that I get into.
Go there.
I'd love Dan Hurley. I can't lie, but I will rip him. Maybe in the 10 o'clock hour, maybe the 11 o'clock hour. It depends. We do have some basketball stuff I want to run by you, Dan. We also got some Niners news that I think is interesting that's leaked out from the first week of minicamp. Who's there, who's not, who's been getting paid, who wants to get paid, and just where the 49ers find themselves at this point in the summer. But in regards to, the conversation, now you're talking about like ripping people down. I generally don't believe that that's like kicking a guy when he's on his way out, to me, is just unfair. But I will say that if the one thing that comes to your mind, if it's an athlete, if it's an umpire, if it's negative, that's how you're going to be remembered. Like, for example, the umpire that I will always remember is Eric Gregg.
Eric Gregg.
Because the 1997 NLCS was a Game 7 between the Braves and the Marlins.
Fat umpires?
Levon Hernandez struck out 14 batters. Not one of those strikeouts was a strike. Like the man punched out Fred McGriff, or maybe I forget who it was who was on the Marlins. He punched out the final batter of the game. The ball was in the other batter's box.
Cabrera.
Yeah, like, what are we doing? So I will always remember him for having a terrible strike zone and arguably the biggest game of those players' young careers. Angel Hernandez, you're going to have to live with it. I don't know about the worst umpire in the history of baseball. I think that social media and video footage is probably going to be not on his side in this case if you took it to court. But come on, I mean, I'm sure somebody in the 1920s was blind and they let him call balls and strikes.
Listen, he called a lot of All-Star games and NLCS and ALCS and
I can't
World
believe I'm
Series.
defending Angel Hernandez.
Well, no, because he was bad. But the way you measure it is because we're talking about the sabermetrics and all the measuring devices they have in place. Well, they also do that for umpires. And so when you go off of that, he was always in the lower percentile from his peers, right? So that's what you have to pay attention to. I don't listen to the fan who suddenly is gravitating to every bad call of Angel Hernandez. The bigger story, I guess, is what I'm getting at, is that right after that, I saw before the NBA Finals started, and I'm watching ESPN, and Greenberg is doing his show, and he's saying right from the rundown and story number one, that Jason Tatum not only has to win the NBA Finals, he's got to be the MVP. Like, we're already ready to tear down the Boston Celtics. Like, that narrative, like, it's almost as though we want them to fall short so I can tell everybody, I told you so. He was soft. And it feeds into what is sort of the temperature for sports media these days, that we want our stars, whether we're willing to admit it or not, we want them to stumble, maybe because it makes us feel good in our little world. I'm not exactly sure the origin of it, but I do know it's real.
I don't know.
The funniest sports take that I saw going into the NBA Finals was that, and it was kind of a dig at Boston, like the city, was that if the Mavericks win the Finals, that they're going to retire Luka Doncic's jersey at the Garden. Because he's the closest thing to Bird.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Oh, no, I think there are a couple things, though, from that game, or I guess from the series, from the overall playoffs that the Warriors can take away, and we can get into that in just a little bit. In regards to like propping up and tearing people down, I don't know why people choose certain athletes. Like there aren't many athletes that I hate. I'm not even sure there's any that I can name off the top of my head. Like for a while, It was this guy, Alexander Zverev, who's playing tomorrow in the French Open final against Alcaraz, because he was involved in, like a domestic violence case. Those are players that I don't want to root for. But I mean, like, if you do something on the field or on the court, whatever your respective playing surface is, I don't know if I can necessarily hate you. Like, I don't want someone to fail. In this case, for the NBA Finals or the Stanley Cup Finals or eventually for the World Series, and I just want to see things unfold, because I think that sports are the one story that no one knows where they're going. Everyone thinks they do. Like, I think that Boston's going to win the finals, but there'll be something throughout this series that shocks you or surprises you, and that is going to tell us what the narrative or what the, I don't know, overall story of this player is going to be.
Well, let me give you another example. Remember Shohei Ohtani? No one's bigger in baseball, maybe in professional sports, than Shohei, especially right after.
He's the most unique baseball player.
The ink hadn't even dried on that $70 million a year contract. And almost like within a month, a couple of weeks after that news, it leaked out that his translator was this degenerate gambler who was illegally gambling and pilfering money from his bank account. How many of us immediately, without any level of proof, were saying, Shohei's got to be involved? Shohei Ohtani has got to be involved in terms of gambling. Oh my God, Shohei Ohtani is a degenerate. He's got a gambling addiction.
Don't talk to Carter about that.
Oh, sorry, my man. but people would immediately rush there. Why? Because, oh my God, we've got Shohei. We're going to tear him down. This is beautiful. Maybe, part of it, Ev, what it could be is that we're so content hungry these days. Whether it's shows like this or whether it's podcasts or trying to fill 4 hours. That wasn't the case just a couple of years ago. But we need so much content because we're talking sports 24/7 that, oh my God, we got a story. Shohei Ohtani, did you hear this? Don't forget to join us coming up tonight when I do my show from my bedroom. I'm going to talk about Shohei Ohtani. He's a gambling fool. I mean, I don't know what's driving it. There's multiple forces here, but I do know, again, that it's a real entity that we want to see our stars, whether we love them or hate them, if we feel there's a story there, like Jason Tatum falling short, there's a lot of people out there going, God, I hope he sucks. And he wasn't very good in game one, so that I can continue to rip the guy. That's just where a lot of people live. And I think Angel Hernandez was part of that. Now, Angel Hernandez was bad, don't get me wrong, but it fed sort of a larger beast.
Yeah, I don't know if Shohei Ohtani was involved. I do wholeheartedly believe that he knew his boy had a gambling problem. There's some just...
Oh, you might be right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. But
$16 million is a lot of money.
You better be careful.
That's like Bruno Mars money.
But the bigger issue is that a lot of people wanted to take it a step further, and it was that he was gambling. And I know a lot of people had a rush to judgment before he came out and publicly said, I had nothing to do with this. That interim, whether it was a week, people were running with it.
Yeah, and I think it's also one of the reasons why, for example, people wanted to compare immediately Anthony Edwards to Michael Jordan. I mean, you're looking for, I don't know, the most extreme comp or conclusion possible. But Dan was talking about content, the need for content. We got it coming your way for the next 2 hours up until noon. Saturdays on 95.7 The Game. My name is Evan Giddings. That's Dan Devone. 888-957-9570 is the number. Also on YouTube and Twitch, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. Can check us out there. And we are going to come back. I want to get into the San Francisco 49ers, though, because there was something that yesterday and really over the last couple of days has been catching my eye, and I feel like is flown a little bit under the radar in regards to Brandon Aiyuk, because there hasn't been too many new angles of this story. But I think we were provided one less than 24 hours ago, Dan, that caught my eye and I think is very interesting in regards to the leverage or the battle in negotiations between the 49ers and their number one wide receiver. So let's get into that on the other side as we continue on. Can I also tell you
something else when it comes to the 49ers?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I put this to Stuart Hall Carter or King Kong Carter last week, a couple of weeks back, and I think this is the bigger issue. Who would you rather be dating? Would you rather be dating Miss Universe, Olivia Culpo, like that of Kristen McCaffrey, or do you want to be Paul Skeens dating Olivia Dunn? That's all I want to know.
I'll tell you on the other side.
All right.
On 95.7 The Game.
Wonderful product. I've lost 111 pounds using that product. 111 pounds. You could not believe the difference. I went from a size 48 pant to a 33 pant and I've maintained that now for over almost a year now. Yeah, absolutely. Andro 400 has helped me lose 111 pounds, and I've maintained my weight for almost a year now.
Thanks, James, for that inspiring testimony and 111 good reasons to choose Andro 400, the most effective and natural way to lose belly fat, increase libido, gain energy, strength, and muscle while safely boosting your testosterone levels. So guys, how many reasons do you need for trying Andro 400? Well, here are 2 more great reasons. Order now and get free shipping plus an additional $6 off when you use the code SAVE6. That's SAVE6. Call 888-400-0435, 888-400-0435, or go to andro400.com. andro400.com.
From carriage house to glass aluminum doors, R&S Doors has a full line of commercial and residential garage doors and gates to suit anyone's taste and budget. Visit RS.
Are you upset that you don't date older women? Is that what it is?
No, I don't date younger women. That much younger.
She is.
I think she's 20.
She is 20
in
years
college,
old.
right?
I thought she was done with college.
LSU TikTok star.
Well, she's NIL. I think she is. Maybe her and Shedeur Sanders are 1 and 2 when it comes to NIL earnings.
I did read that they actually LSU asked her because she's a gymnast. I think she also dates the Pittsburgh Pirates #1 overall pick Paul Skeens,
Who went to LSU?
Yeah, also went to LSU. But I did read that the university asked her to stop posting about her, her gymnastic events on TikTok because there would be too many people that would come to watch her, and these venues would get flooded. They would just get overcrowded, and nobody could move anywhere. And it was like this she was, like Rihanna, like this celebrity walking down the red carpet, and just would get mobbed if she would post where she was at and when she was competing.
Wow.
That's the only thing I know about her.
Hazard. That's interesting. I would think that it would be just the opposite, right?
What's up, Carter?
She's 21, just FYI.
Oh,
so she's legal.
All right, well, I'm in.
So is it Olivia Dunn or Colpo, who is Miss Universe, by the way?
Put me on the stand right now.
I mean, Colpo's got to be in
probably Colpo.
Okay.
Although
she's not making as much money.
I was going to say the net worth might be in the wrong direction. But
Colpo has 6 million followers almost on Instagram. She must be making something.
Well, she's also about to be making a little bit more because her soon-to-be husband, Christian McCaffrey, just got paid $24 million guaranteed by the San Francisco 49ers. So I think I'll marry into that.
Yeah.
Well, also the McCaffrey family, just in general, talking about legends. They are the football.
They got another younger brother,
family.
right?
Yes, he's a wide receiver, went to Rice. I forget his first name. Did he get drafted this year? I think he might have been undrafted. He was drafted. Okay, I know he was pretty good at Rice.
Giants, yeah.
Luke McCaffrey, I think is his name.
Yeah,
Luke McCaffrey.
Good job.
People were.
Do you remember Ed? Or are you too young?
I have spoken to Ed. I've actually interviewed Ed on this station, but I've never met the guy.
Okay.
I've only talked to him through the phone.
Former
Stanford
nice, standout wide receiver. It's where it all started.
Oh, Luke McCaffrey's on the Commanders.
Okay.
He was taken by the Commanders.
Oh, well,
by the way, his dad apparently was a really good basketball player.
Yeah, great athlete.
Out of Pennsylvania.
It makes a lot of sense because the woman he married also was a 5-star collegiate, I want to say soccer player, and also played collegiately. So they were very, very talented.
God, what a gene pool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that their eldest, Christian, is one of the best athletes that I've seen. Like, I don't know. We were having this discussion, by the way. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone, Saturdays, 95.7 The Game, taking you up until noon. We are talking
what are we
about
calling
the Bears.
Carter? Are we going Carter Chickering, Stuart Hall Carter, King Kong Carter, or is it just Carter?
Chickering Hearn? Is that?
Chickering Hearn.
It's not bad.
Just Chick.
It's Chick.
Well, I actually like that. I mean, he's, again, the farthest thing. So I
was going to say, he's not a chick. And I don't mean that in a, misogynistic manner. I mean, as far as a small chicken.
And if he was a chick, you're not dating that.
The guy's a rooster.
I'll go with Chick.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Chick. No, but I think with the 49ers and McCaffrey, like that was actually the big news that came out this week from camp, of course, was everybody was wondering whether or not he was going to be there at the beginning of minicamp because it looked like he might be holding out for guaranteed money. He got it. He got 19 years over the next two, or $19 million over the next 2 years, 24 of it guaranteed. Prior to, he was playing without any guaranteed money on the last couple of years of his contract. By far and away the best running back in the league. In fact, I would argue that in regards to position groups, his number one status as running back and the gap between him and the second best running back is farther than any other position. Like Mahomes to your second best quarterback, I don't think that gap is as far as McCaffrey to the second best running back.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So, in fact, I think he's still underpaid based on what he gives the 49ers.
Yeah, because they continue to do this position by position. Why they get away with that, I have no idea. It should just be simply your impact to the team. Could you imagine if they were to say to Kyrie Irving or any other player, well, you're a guard, so your ceiling caps at $15 million a year. I mean, that's what they did to Kittle as he's a tight end. Well, we can only pay you so much, even though at the time he's your biggest impact offensive player, more so than Jimmy Garoppolo. But he was limited as to how much he could make because of the position he played, which was tight end.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think quarterback is obviously the highest paid position in the league. I think the second highest paid position now on average might be wide receiver, but for a long time it was left tackle.
Yeah, or the edge.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. Yeah, defensive line. Gosh, those guys are making big bread. Nick Bosa is, of course, the record setter. Was the record setter for a non-quarterback up until Justin Jefferson broke that with $35 million a year, 110 of it guaranteed, 88 at signing, all of which are records for a non-quarterback. And I think if you're Brandon Aiyuk, that contract has made it more difficult if you're the San Francisco 49ers. But I think also, Dan, it made it more difficult for Brandon Aiyuk because from what I've heard and seen, he doesn't really have a lot of leverage. I think he's still going to get paid, and it's going to be close to $30 million. But I do wonder when it happens because reports are they're not close. The talks have not necessarily gotten anywhere. And now Justin Jefferson gets this record-setting bag. Christian McCaffrey gets his bag, an extension before Aiyuk does. I just don't see any reason for either side to budge at this point.
I don't know that the Justin Jefferson, the money and the numbers are going to influence the offer that the 49ers are going to give to Brandon Aiyuk. I think the numbers are going to remain the same, even prior to, even to had Justin Jefferson not signed for that deal. I think, again, when we talk about Christian McCaffrey and how important he is to the San Francisco 49ers, well, the same holds true with Justin Jefferson, who are basically, the Vikings were Justin Jefferson-centric. That's not true with the 49ers. While Brandon Aiyuk is certainly good and deserves market value, the 49ers had more than one option. It wasn't just, we live and die with Brandon Aiyuk. There was Kittle. There was obviously Deebo Samuel. There's so many things. They had so many options because they're so star-studded. So it's sort of apples and oranges, and I don't think that's going to influence the numbers as much as people anticipate.
Well, that's an interesting dynamic to this negotiation as well, because I wonder where you fall in this, Dan, and Carter, you also. Do you guys think that because Aiyuk isn't the focal point of he's the number one wide receiver, but he's not the focal point of the offense in terms of importance? It starts with McCaffrey. You could say on some days it's Deebo. Some days it might even be Kittle. After McCaffrey, Aiyuk, I would say, is secondary. But do you look at his production and say, well, they don't use him a lot, so actually he's more efficient, he's more effective than he's being used as, or he's that good because teams aren't allowed to be attentive to him? I've heard it go both ways. I think Justin Jefferson is somebody that hasn't had a lot of help. Kirk Cousins has been a good quarterback, but they'd have in Minnesota not really had much of a run game. The offensive line hasn't been great. They haven't had a great defense. So when he posts 120 yards a game, that seems legitimate. Whereas Brandon Aiyuk has never had to face consistent double teams and being the focus of an opposing game plan.
I think at the beginning of the season, there might be some truth to that, but towards the end of the year, he was clearly their number one. And I think going into the playoffs, there was a circle around Brandon Aiyuk, and he delivered in the postseason. So I still think, though, they're over the course of an entire season, can he be the focus? Can he, if you're going to get paid like a number one type quarterback, those questions still remain unanswered. I'm not necessarily a big Aiyuk guy. I think he's played well, and he certainly understood that this is a contract year, and he stepped up. But when you look at his body of work, it was this year was sort of the outlier. I mean, Brandon Aiyuk was sort of underwhelming just a short 2 years ago. So
he's gotten better each and every season.
No, he has, and he's gonna get paid, but he's not coming into the Justin Jefferson neighborhood.
I don't think so either. But how do you kind of read that, Carter?
Well, I just think it's really interesting that not so long ago this guy wasn't getting on the field because Kyle didn't have faith in him.
Had him in the doghouse. Remember that?
Yeah. And now we're talking about that this guy potentially is going to get a $30 million contract, I mean, and Kruger brought this up yesterday, which is the 49ers are last in passes thrown in the NFL. Do you want to put that much in your wide receiver room?
Well, I think it's about putting it in the room this year because obviously I don't think you took a first-round wide receiver unless you assume that one of your three guys in front of them, because I'll also put Juwan Jennings there, who got $15 million, 10 of it guaranteed this offseason. One or two of those guys are probably going to be gone. So that's why you take the first-round pick. But I think for this year, I guess I don't look at it as investing $60 million into your wide receiver room because you're probably going to take a big chunk out of it this upcoming offseason or next summer. So I think with Aiyuk, it's a position where the 49ers, they have to pay him. I just think they do in order to keep themselves in the best possible position to win a Super Bowl, they need to pay Brandon Aiyuk. But if you're Brandon Aiyuk, and this is where I do think the Justin Jefferson contract comes into play, it's, well, if you want to pay me 28, okay, am I 20% worse than Justin Jefferson? Like, everything is now being measured against him. It's one of the big reasons, I think David Lombardi brought this up this week from The Athletic. It's one of the big reasons why there was this haggling by Lamar Jackson last offseason because of what Deshaun Watson got paid. Everyone knows that Deshaun Watson is not the best quarterback in the league the way that Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in football, but he got so much guaranteed money. Justin Jefferson got so much guaranteed money that Tyreek Hill's at 51. Justin Jefferson is at 88 million just at signing. So is Aiyuk saying he's better than Tyreek Hill? Not necessarily, but he might be 10% less than Justin Jefferson in his mind. I just don't feel like either side has a reason to give into the other. And unfortunately for Aiyuk, I also don't think he has much leverage in this situation because the 49ers could just say, play on your 5th year. Or after that, we'll franchise tag. Like, both sides can play hardball, and that's why I don't see this deal getting done anywhere anytime soon.
Well, the only leverage he might have is that the 49ers recognize that we always talk about windows, that this is the opportunity yet again to win that Super Bowl. As you just mentioned, once Purdy gets paid, it's going to change the entire dynamic when it comes to players like that of Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel and McCaffrey. So I think they recognize that this is the year. And while you don't have to pay him, we want a good and a happy and a satisfied Brandon Aiyuk because this is our opportunity. While we still got arguably the best quarterback in the conference, making less than $1 million. Let's just, let's not argue this thing at the margins. Let's not get petty and ruin all of this. Let's just give him market value and go ahead and get that Super Bowl. And then, of course, once we pay Purdy, then it's time to reassess, and we're going to have to say goodbye to somebody. And most likely it's going to be Deebo Samuel. But I think the leverage, if you really think about it, is the fact that everybody realizes that they have yet to win that Super Bowl. And once again, this might be the opportunity before Brock Purdy gets the chicken, as they like to say, before he gets his bag. Go ahead and certainly placate players like that, a Brandon Aiyuk, because this is the opportunity.
Yeah, but I think that's where there's an issue. Like, you're right. The market will dictate what Brandon Aiyuk is going to get paid. But which market or which player do you put him in the same group as? Like, I think it's also a pride thing of Brandon Aiyuk wanting to be paid like other number one wide receivers. I don't think the Niners use him like these other number one wide receivers. That's why I think, in a way, some people might feel like it's disrespectful, but like the Jalen Waddle deal, I think it's somewhere around there as far as getting mostly guaranteed money. Maybe the Niners only want 3 years. Maybe Aiyuk wants 4, or maybe he wants 3 and wants a chance to maximize his second deal. I don't know. I just feel like right now there is such I guess it's hard for me to read where the market is right now and where people fall on Aiyuk because there's so many different ways you can interpret his production. You're talking about the postseason. I mean, in the Super Bowl, he had 3 catches for 49 yards. He's never had more in a playoff game than, I think, 80 yards. So it's not as if he has taken over a playoff game, which is what we judge many players on, whether it's McCaffrey, whether it's Purdy. I know it mainly gets thrown into quarterbacks, but Brandon Aiyuk has not had a big marquee postseason game. He had a marquee catch against the Detroit Lions, but that was one of his 3. So I do wonder how also people look at him in regards to the big moments, because if that's what we're really judging this season on, and I think we are, it's Super Bowl or bust in a way for the Niners this season because of the players that might be leaving next summer. But how do you judge? Like, do you judge him just based on his 1,300 yards this year? Is a second team All-Pro? Or the fact that he has not had the big game in the biggest game?
I think you also have to take into account that this is the first wide receiver that Brock Purdy has developed some rapport with. So I think Brock Purdy, while he probably doesn't have any voice in this, I think that if you were to ask Brock Purdy, he would tell you that, yeah, we need this guy because when things are going wrong, I'm looking for him. I've developed a chemistry with not Deebo, with not Kittle, but as Brandon Aiyuk. And Brandon Aiyuk is my guy, so I think they have to recognize that and take that into account. Let me ask you something. Well, we always use the high end as the barometer, Justin Jefferson. Do you think he's a better wide receiver than Devontae Smith?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
But you can see how, they're sort of in the same neighborhood. Devontae Smith for Philadelphia, I mean, when you talk
he's very good.
Well, I would say that they're comparable, and I would actually put a gun to my head and say Devontae Smith might be a little bit better. When you think about Devontae Smith hasn't been in the league as long, when you think about the trajectory of that young man. Well, Devontae Smith just signed for 3 years at 75, which comes to 25 per.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's comps you can run with Justin Jefferson. I can also run comps when it comes to the likes of someone like that of Devontae Smith, who is making $25 million a year.
Well, I think we just talked about the high end and the low end as far as the money's concerned. I think personally Brandon Aiyuk is at this point in his career a better wide receiver than Devontae Smith. The comparison between him and Amon-Ra St. Brown is, I think, where a lot of people get stuck. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is a better wide receiver than Brandon Aiyuk. How do you pay him more than Amon-Ra St. Brown? Because Amon-Ra is getting, I think, around 28 per. You look at the guaranteed money, it's one of the highest. I think it's, in terms of overall, it's in the 80s. So, I mean, I think, it's hard for me to say that he's worth more than that. But at the same time, the more that the 49ers wait this out, they might be costing themselves more money, because also CeeDee Lamb's got to sign. There's a lot of people that feel like if Brandon Aiyuk was featured the same way that CeeDee Lamb is featured in Dallas, he might be able to put up those numbers. He might be a consistent first-team All-Pro selection the way that CeeDee Lamb is. I think CeeDee is a better receiver than Aiyuk. But that's why I asked whether you interpret his production as a product of the offense or him being, I guess, one of the primary pieces
he's
of
a product
that.
of the offense, but you could also make the case for Brock Purdy to a lesser degree. And I think that's just, when you're talking about the 49ers, there really isn't room for that sort of stardom. They're not really McCaffrey maybe, but I mean, this is Kyle Shanahan, who's probably the most innovative, hands-on offensive head coach in the league. And so there's really not the availability, the affordability for you to simply go to, when you get into this bartering stance and saying, look, I'm clearly Justin Jefferson and head and shoulders above everybody else on this football team, and you need me. There's a certain degree of that, but it's measured when it comes to the 49ers and all of their star players.
All right, David in El Cerrito wants to talk about, I think, a dynamic of this that gets a little bit lost. And I think one of the conundrums that the 49ers are facing right now in regards to Brandon Aiyuk and the contract negotiations. What's going on, David? You're up with Evan and Dan on 95.7 The Game. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Good morning to you both.
Yo.
I just feel that the position itself does not lend itself to paying guys, especially when you have another guy that you've already paid that much money, no matter how good he is, unless that person truly is the game-changing player in the league. If you're discussing, is he as good as Devontae Smith, or is he as good of another guy at a similar ilk, I don't know, Chris Olave, or whomever it might be, I think you say to yourself, if he got hurt before an enormous game, you'd be like, that's really bad, but can we still win this game? But if McCaffrey gets hurt before a big game, or Trent Williams gets hurt before a big game, you're like, we're screwed. And I think when it comes to wide receivers, they have figured out that a lot of other guys can step in and make these plays. There are just too many athletes in the NFL that you can find later in drafts, etc., that fill that void. And whether it's good as one guy or another guy, it's almost irrelevant. And a lot of these receivers never respect that they do as well as they do because of the team that they're on and the position that they're in. Like the kid on the Jets is phenomenal, but he does nothing because they have a terrible situation. So I just don't think you can lay out this much money to a guy, because if other things fall apart on the Niners, he'll fall apart as well.
I mean, I would say that where the Niners want to go, though, Dan, if Brandon Aiyuk wasn't available for an NFC Championship game, I would be worried, to be honest. Like, I would be worried about that offense. Not as
but
much
would
as
you
if Christian McCaffrey was missing.
Well, I think that's the point he's trying to make, is that if I'm going to pay you that sort of money, I would have more a level of concern if Debo wasn't available than Brandon Aiyuk, quite frankly, if it's a big football game.
But that's also the reason why I think Debo is perceived as the odd man out, is because Aiyuk doesn't miss games. Like Debo does. Debo is more of an injury-prone back just because of his usage and how he plays, frankly, than Brandon Aiyuk. So Brandon Aiyuk is the more traditional, prototypical wide receiver. He's also the more steady and a player, the more steady of the two, but a player of what you know, what you can get. Like, you know what to expect when Brandon Aiyuk steps on the field. It might not be 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, but you know there's a guy that's going to be out there for 85, 90% of snaps, is going to block his ass off when he's not running routes, and is not going to get hurt. That you can't say about Debo.
No, that's true. And he's a good wide receiver. I don't think he's worth Justin Jefferson money. In fact, I wouldn't call him expendable. But to the caller's point, when you're talking about wide receivers with the 49ers or any sort of offensive position when it comes to Kyle Shanahan, more often than not, it's next man up. Like the 49ers are not necessarily dependent on Brandon Aiyuk being back with his football team as far as them winning a Super Bowl. I know it's a large statement.
Excuse me?
No, if Brandon Aiyuk does not come back to this football team, it's not going to be the end of the day in terms of them winning a Super Bowl.
Ooh, I would disagree with that.
You can disagree with it, but the point being is that if Brock Purdy's not available, you're going to be, you're not. If Dobbs is your quarterback, then you're not going to the Super Bowl.
Sure.
If McCaffrey's not available, even if Debo's not available, if Kittle can't play this year, if Trent Williams can't play, I can overcome Brandon Aiyuk, believe it or not being my wide receiver. Now, I got to see a lot more out of this kid from Florida, and there's going to be a lot more on him and Juwan Giddings, but I'll still be okay. That's just my feeling. And so when it comes to negotiations, I would take that into account. Like, this is not a Brandon Aiyuk-centric football team. To me, he is the product of a lot of the innovation that is Kyle Shanahan, and the ability on those shallow crosses to get more rack, I think, because out of the system than any other wide receivers in the league. Now, don't get me wrong, he's good and you'd like to have him, but is it a deal breaker if I don't have Brandon Aiyuk? Not to me.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Ricky Pearsall, or as I've been seeing some people call him, Yak Harlow, the newest first-round selection by the San Francisco 49ers. I'm glad you brought him up because I think he does factor into the negotiations. Not on purpose, but the Niners took him for a reason. And there was also something that came out yesterday from Matt Barrows of The Athletic that I thought was interesting in regard to the Aiyuk situation versus the Bosa situation. It caught my ear, and if I'm Brandon Aiyuk and I heard that or am under what the Niners are treating him like right now, I actually would be a little bit pissed. So if you want to comment on that, if you want to talk to Dan about him not thinking the Niners are Brandon Aiyuk-centric, if they need him, if they don't, 888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings and Dan Devone with you on Saturdays here on 95.7 The Game. We're back after this.
With your choice of select sandwich, nugs, fries, and a drink, Wendy's $5 Biggie Bag is your go-to. Your nugget wingman.
and I remember the walk-off ninth inning. Everything in between is a little hazy.
What's the pregame like?
It was a true Coliseum experience. Yeah, so I swear to God, like every time you go to the Coliseum, you probably get this as a city guy. Like when you go somewhere local, you eventually run into people you know.
Yeah.
Like, so
that's always fun.
You're usually there in the parking lot. I had a clue that one of my boys was going to be there. So it was supposed to be like a reverse boycott night. People go show the A's that they still want to, they want to keep the team, even though they're leaving at the end of the year. And so I figured a few of my boys would be there. So I just texted one of them like, yo, are you here? He said, parking lot A6. Usually on the north side, that's kind of where we used to be back in the day. So myself, big chick over here in the back, along with Director of Sports Lucas Alexander, my brother, his friend, my other friend Natalie, and my new roommate Aaron was kind enough to come along. Got her first experience at the Coliseum. So did Carter. And I love sharing the parking lot, which was basically just, I don't know, a setup and a frat scene, to be quite honest, of people playing flip cup or beer die or beer pong, whatever it is. And you get a little loose in the parking lot. You head in about the second inning, and you figure out if the A's have won or lost yet.
Okay. Are we eating anything in this pregame?
Not enough.
Okay.
Not enough. No, there was, not a lot of, I would say not too much food consumed, but people will bring hot dogs and burgers and, like that is the one difference I would say between the Coliseum and now Oracle Park is there's not too many places that you can tailgate like in San Francisco. I mean, I guess you can set up down in one of the parking lots, although it might not be allowed. I'm not sure. I haven't done a Giants tailgate in probably, I don't know, 10 or 15 years.
Well, there's no parking lot.
Well, you have to go down to like one of the further lots, like in Mission Bay.
Yeah, I know, but essentially there's no parking lot, which was sort of that was done by design, right? Because they want what's in vogue now, these downtown stadiums, so that all the commerce in the restaurants and the bars surrounding the stadium is where, economically they want to live and thrive.
Yeah, but it does get rid of some of the pregame experience. Like it's the same thing in Seattle. Like the Mariners at T-Mobile or whatever it is now. It might be T-Mobile Park. There's no place that you can go park and tailgate and kind of congregate before the game. It's just all in these little side alleys.
Yeah. No, it's a lost art. I'm with you.
And
but it's part of it's part of the reason why people don't like where the A's currently play, because it's not a downtown location. Like that's the blueprint now.
Oh yeah, like the league and the teams don't, because it's not as much of a an economic force.
Well, that's the only way they see things. Yeah,
that's true.
But from a fan standpoint, there's nothing better.
Hotels.
Yeah, going to the parking lot of the stadium in which you're playing in.
Well, I've been there countless times, but Carter, I'm curious. Did you enjoy your experience last night at the Coliseum?
Yeah, big time.
Was that your first time?
Really, my first time. Yeah, I thought it was so difficult to see the score of the game. I mean, I just really struggled with that.
Why is that?
Because all right, the scoreboard is they're throwing a lot at you. First of all, it's not as big as the Oracle Park one. There's two of them. They're on basically the two foul lines, and they're new, but there's a lot to read, and it's kind of hard to figure out like where the radar gun is, where the count is, the score. And the color schemes don't make it easy to differentiate, especially if, you're a little gassed up.
Do they still have the ivy out there beyond the bleachers?
The ivy? No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, they still have Mount Davis, though.
Oh, that's right. Mount Davis. Yeah.
I think you're thinking of the 80s. Like I've never been to the Coliseum and been able to see the Oakland Hills in my entire life.
Wow. That Mount Davis that capped everything. That's when it's just like, oh my God, this is not the same experience, man.
No, but I will say back in the day when they used to get like for a big game or a playoff game or even fireworks, when they would open up the upper deck, dude, getting up there, you are high. Literally and figuratively. No, okay, so actually, we will get into the 49ers in just a moment. I appreciate you, Austin and San Jose, for hanging on. 888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone, Carter Chickering with you here on 95.7 The Game. But no, it was a fun experience. I think, I don't know, it's fun for me to share those, I don't know, collective experiences that I've had my entire life, having gone countless times with people who haven't gone before. So Carter went for his first time. My roommate Aaron went for her first time. And yeah, we all just got to sit around and enjoy a baseball game.
I think the bigger story is that you have a female roommate. I'm just saying that speaks volumes about you. No, I could never back in the day I was never a roommate kind of guy, but I would have to live with guys.
You were never a roommate kind of guy?
But I'm just saying, if I did have a roommate in college, I could not live with a woman.
This is 2024. We live in the city. I need roommates.
But you have no issues with it being from the opposite sex?
No, she's very nice. I mean, if anything, I feel like I'm more protective.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, no, she's also, I don't want to put her business in the streets, but she's an intern at a prominent,
got it. Okay. I guess my problem is back in the day when I was running the streets.
Grouping.
Back in the day, it's that I would just categorize women as, one of two things. Either someone I was dating or someone that rebuffed me. So I could never, there was no middle ground.
You have a sister, though.
I do.
So what do you mean you've never been
What, am I going to live with her?
You never lived with your sister?
But you mean in terms of as
you shared
getting an apartment together?
You shared, well, actually I don't have to share a restroom, but no, you share things with your roommates.
I hear what you're saying. It's just sort of like, something.
I'm learning about
Carter,
you, Dan.
Would you just call him Chick what? That was a great name.
Big Chick.
Big Chick. Where you at with female roommates?
Got to do what you got to do.
Okay. Wow, you guys are
she can
much
make
more
rent.
progressed than I am.
That's all I know.
That's all that matters.
Yeah, as long as I'm getting the check on the 28th or 29th of every month, I appreciate it. So shout out to our roommates.
Well, actually, it's probably more appropriate if I was asked the woman what it's like living with the guy.
Yeah, if anything, it's harder for her. I mean, myself and Mark Grandy are roommates, and so our third moved out. We had to fill the spot. She was cool, moved in. As long as it's cool with her, it's cool with us. I mean, we're the ones that are trashing the place and coming home stumbling from Coliseum baseball games at 2 a.m. Or at least I am. Well, don't want to speak for Grandy. But we are, I swear, we are talking about, or at least we were talking about the San Francisco 49ers, as well as, I don't know, probably like a myriad of things. Dan, I feel like we stumble into so many different subjects throughout the show, whether it's on air, off the air.
I can't wait to go Danny Hurley on you.
I want to save that because I'm going to rip him just for you, and I'm going to do that in just a little bit. We do have a couple people on the phone line right now that I'm going to wait for Carter to scream before we get him on, but 888-957-9570 is the number. I want to play you this piece of sound from Matt Barrows, Dan. It's on Brandon Aiyuk, and I thought it was very interesting because one of the, I guess, reports or kind of thoughts from the first week of minicamp, which is if you're not there, you get fined, right? So I think over the course of 3 days, it comes out to be like $100,000. And the 49ers, I just assumed, were going to pick up that check because they did the same thing for Nick Bosa last offseason when he was holding out. But that might not actually be the case, and why this negotiation between Aiyuk and the 49ers might not be contentious, but might be a little more tangled than we envision. Here's Matt Barrows from The Athletic on it.
I don't want to say it's contentious, but difficult negotiation right now with Aiyuk. But so was the Deebo Samuel one, so was the Nick Bosa one, and they both eventually got done. It is interesting, though, that the 49ers used a first-round pick on a wide receiver. That wide receiver has played well this spring. I would think that only strengthens the 49ers' stance at this point. I still think something is going to get done. I still think it would be a travesty if Brock Purdy went into this season without his favorite target. All those fines will start piling up in the summer. No indication that the 49ers will forgive Aiyuk for absences the way that they did for Nick Bosa.
And so, I mean, you heard from Matt Barrows right there, Dan. There's been no indication that they're going to forgive his fines. That would piss me off a little bit.
I love Matt Barrows, but when he says that Ricky Pearsall has played well in the spring, we're talking shorts and T-shirts, right? I mean,
just saw him in pads.
I mean, yeah,
or a helmet.
Yeah, I mean, we're not. I don't think you can pass any judgment on the guy until we get into the bullets are flying for real, right? Live bullets, live ammo, and we'll just see what sort of football player he is. Right now, it's just like, yeah, he looks good, and he's quick and all those sort of things you get excited about. But it's still spring football. Let's just when we strap this thing on and somebody, we'll just find out a lot more about the guy when we get into a game situation. But I hear what it is that he's saying. And I think that the 49ers, and they've just been down this road so many times. I mean, this is not nearly as vicious as Deebo Samuel. I mean, I think that if we were to relive that, it was almost, I can remember doing shows that it was almost imminent that Deebo was out the door. And Nick Bosa got really ugly as well. And that thing was about as protracted as it gets. I mean, that went nearly into the season. So This isn't foreign to the 49ers. And they know exactly what hand they're dealing with, and they know exactly where they're at and where their offer is going to be. And I think the 49ers, when you talk about leverage, I think the 49ers have it. Again, because Brandon Aiyuk, to me, is not Justin Jefferson, and he is not as vital to this football team winning games as some of the other pieces that the Niners currently have.
But now you got me thinking, though, and I want to pose this. 888-957-9570, also the number for the Xfinity mobile text line. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone here on Saturdays on 95.7 The Game. Which situation has been the most tense? Aiyuk's, Debo's, or Bosa's? Because I actually think that this Brandon Aiyuk contract negotiation has been the most tense of the three. And the reason is because I don't think he has as much leverage as the other two. Remember, Debo was coming off an all-pro first-team season.
Well, define tense, that they might leave?
That there's... I just don't think either's... I have less confidence. I think Aiyuk's going to sign.
Yeah.
But if he played his fifth year... I guess... Well, Debo didn't have the option to play his fifth year. Bosa held out until close to week one. But I always thought that those deals were going to get done.
Really, Debo, I would say Debo, again, not knowing the...
Because Brandon Aiyuk wasn't a factor at that point, as much as he is now.
But if you're talking about a player potentially leaving, I thought Debo was much more tense. To me, let's keep in mind where Debo was 2 years ago. I mean, he was... We're talking about how no one can clearly be centric on a 49er football team aside from that of the quarterback. Well, Debo was that guy. I mean, the 49ers were Debo or bust, if you remember. And he was coming off that big playoff run against
fantastic.
The Rams and the Cowboys and throughout that entire season. And when he said, basically gave the throat slash on one of his, social accounts, and it looked as though he was, potentially going. And he meant much more to the football team, I think, than Brandon Aiyuk.
I agree. And that's why I also felt like the Niners were absolutely going to give him the bag and we're going to bring him in. I think they're going to pay Aiyuk because they want to keep this band together. But I don't think they're as, to your point last segment, I don't think they're as dependent right now on Brandon Aiyuk as they were in 2021 on Debo Samuel.
No doubt.
I mean, he was Christian McCaffrey before Christian McCaffrey in regards to his importance and place in the hierarchy of this offense. I don't think Brandon Aiyuk is that now, but I think what we're trying to figure out is it just the going rate? Is it the market? Is that what gets it done? Or is it the fact that the Niners have more ammunition to play hardball? Because again, when I hear from Matt Barrows that there is no indication that they're going to just excuse his absences, that they're going to force Brandon Aiyuk to pay $100,000 or potentially continue to pay fines for his absence from camp or mini camp, future team affiliated practices. Like, that is big to me because I have not heard, or I just didn't assume, Dan, that was even on the table. I just assumed they're going to pick up the check because Brandon Aiyuk's their guy and they're just eventually going to get this thing done, which is what they did to Debo. And they also picked up Nick Bosa's check. And he was one that looked like he may have hold out into the season.
Yeah.
So I just feel like this situation is more tense than the other two. I could be wrong, but 888-957-9570 is the number. Austin's been waiting patiently in San Jose. What's going on, Austin? You're on with Evan and Dan. How are you, my man?
Hey, happy Saturday. Yeah, you should guys be playing the song Money, Money, Money for the love of money. we're talking about this morning. Rich guys getting richer. I always find that kind of interesting. But listen, I don't think I'm a non-Niner fan, so I'm gonna come at it from a different perspective. I think that the Shanahan, this is Shanahan kind of shenanigans, if you will, right? I think Shanahan likes having the upper hand on his athletes. I think he loves being the boss and keeping guys kind of wondering about their money, the chicken. I think this is part of his deal. Lynch tends to talk too much, in my opinion. He talks about Purdy breaking the bank or someone saying resetting the quarterback market. I mean, I don't know why you have to go out and make those kind of comments, but anyway, that's the way the 49ers do business. But I do believe, and I said this earlier this week, I think that Shanahan believes he can get it done without Aiyuk. I don't think he perceives Aiyuk as being a Justin Jefferson type receiver. I think he sees him as important and vital. But, you do give a guy $30 million, you keep saying the 49ers want to run it back, and they need to have him to make a run this year or Super Bowl. You're not going to give a guy that kind of money just to make a run this year. I mean, that's not the reason why you would do it. So I just think, all in all, I can see a potential where they could go in a different direction and see what they can get for Aiyuk. I mean, this reminds me of when Khalil Mack was let go. Different situation by Oakland with Gruden. I mean, they couldn't get it done with him. I mean, people were saying how great this guy was, but the 49ers didn't win a Super Bowl with Aiyuk last year. So, I mean, who's to say they're going to come back this year and give him $30 million? That doesn't guarantee you win a Super Bowl. One last thing, guys, on Debo. I said 2 years ago when they signed C-Mac, I thought that was the end for Debo. I'm surprised, honestly, that Debo's still on the roster. I thought he would have been gone a long time ago. And I heard from my brother yesterday in Baltimore, and maybe I missed this, but the feeling back in the Raven land was that Debo was heading to the Ravens. And people are actually starting to talk about Lamar and Debo being on the same team. So I don't know what I must have missed that one. Did you guys hear anything about Debo going to Baltimore? All right, guys, enjoy the day. See ya.
Debo Samuel to Baltimore. I know there was some ideas about, I think, a trade, and the Ravens had reached out. And I think Debo Samuel would fit really well in that offense. Perfect. I mean, out of the backfield, on the outside, I think he'd work with Lamar. But in regards to, I don't know, like, to me, Dan, like, the reason to pay Aiyuk is to keep yourself in the same place, which, yes, Austin's correct. They didn't win a Super Bowl with him. They were in overtime of a Super Bowl. Like, they lost the Super Bowl by 3 points. So if you lose Aiyuk, I do think you take a step back offensively. What it might come down to, and the question a lot of people might have surrounding it is, all right, well, how good is Brock Purdy without Brandon Aiyuk? Can he elevate his game? Can he be more productive without his number one wide receiver? Because I think that's also a question he'll have to answer down the line in a year, maybe 2 years. But will he have to do it in the immediate, before he gets paid? Like, when he gets paid, he's going to lose weapons left and right.
Well, what's the first thing that people always bring to mind when we talk about, okay, when you sign Brock Purdy and he's making $50 to $53 million a year, whatever that number is going to be next year. Now, he's got to play well again this upcoming season. But when you can't afford to have McCaffrey and Kittle and Debo and Brandon Aiyuk, what are you going to be like? And people always, they don't hesitate, and they point at the Kansas City Chiefs. And they're like, well, look at the Kansas City Chiefs still win Super Bowls. They're still the franchise by which everyone else is measured by. And Patrick Mahomes continues to stack hardware. And they reshuffle his quarterback or his wide receiver room almost every year, whether it's Tyreek Hill or whoever is in and out of that play. So it lends to the point that you can win without having a quote-unquote number one, especially when it's a system like that of Kyle Shanahan. I'll stop short of calling Brock Purdy a system quarterback, but the system is a real thing when it comes to the Niners. And it's a good thing because it's more than just one guy. And especially if that guy's Brandon Aiyuk, albeit he's good, he is not somebody that I would consider a necessity. And I stand by, again, a lot of this depends on the emergence of a Juwan Jennings and Pearsall, and we'll see what it's like when the bullets are flying for real, whether he's that guy. But you'll be okay. And aspirations of winning a Super Bowl, if you go hardball with Aiyuk and he's not with his football team, I think the 49ers will be absolutely fine. And I'm not saying that to poke the bear. And I think that a lot of this, it could have been taken, it should have been taken care of probably a lot sooner rather than later to avoid a lot of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think Pearsall's the other wrinkle in this, and it's another reason why I don't think Aiyuk has much leverage. It was a confusing pick to me at the time just because I was curious as to how Pearsall was going to get on the field. But if you're telling me that the Niners are okay with playing hardball with Brandon Aiyuk, then maybe Pearsall can get on the field. Maybe he is your second or third wide receiver should you decide to do something drastic. By drastic, I mean moving on from Brandon Aiyuk one way or another. Or perhaps just not even paying him and forcing him to play on his fifth year. I just think it's all fascinating at this point. Again, hearing Matt Barrows of The Athletic say that there is no indication that the 49ers are going to excuse the absence of Brandon Aiyuk and essentially force him to pay fines that they did not force Nick Bosa to pay last offseason when he held out almost into week one. So 888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone here on Saturdays on 95.7 The Game. Let's get out to Lemoore and talk to Michael about the contract situation. What's up, Michael? How are you?
Good morning. Good. How are you guys doing?
Awesome, man. What do you got?
I disagree. I don't think we'll take a step back if we lose Aiyuk. Kyle Shanahan can create an offense around 3 popsicle sticks in a jar of mustard. And ever since, you also brought up a point. I think that's a good point you brought up about Brock Purdy. You need to see who Brock Purdy truly is without Brandon Aiyuk, because you want to make sure you're comfortable enough to giving him $45 to $50 million a year. And also, there's going to be a lot of guys leaving next year, and the biggest ticket item that's going to be leaving is Diamond Lenore, who stepped up big time the past couple of seasons, and you're going to need to pay him. And also, what if Trent Williams retires? I mean, we're going to have to find a left tackle and also pay him big money. That's the second most important position, I think, on the field. And also, there's Aaron Banks you've got to pay, and Javarius Ward is due for a contract extension as well, and so on and so forth. And you've seen what this offense looks like without Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams. It went completely flatline. And before CMC got here, we had no identity on offense. Our run game was non-existent. CMC turned this team around when he got here. He brought this offense back to life. Brandon Aiyuk does not do that. And I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that. And if I were the 49ers, I would trade him to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a 2nd and 3rd round pick, and also Pat Freiermuth, because we're going to need to find an heir apparent for George Kittle eventually, which we have yet to address. And I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that.
Appreciate the call, Michael.
Lemoore coming strong.
Yeah.
Central Valley.
I don't know. Pat Freiermuth is the answer.
Have fun in 105 degrees in the shade today out there in the beautiful Central Valley.
Well, I might choose that over just the dead fog. Dude, it is cloudy. I can't see across the city right now. I can barely see. Oh, God, I was making this mistake yesterday, Carter. It's not the Continental, but what's the one up by the Fairmont?
I think it's the Mark Hopkins.
The Mark Hopkins.
Why are you asking him? You kidding me?
We're talking about this yesterday.
Across from you.
Yeah, the most bougie man in 95.7 The Game. That's who's sitting across from me.
You know, to Lemoore's point really quick, the 49ers, though, we have to give them credit. They've set the market a couple of times, and they've done well by their players. And I think that they do a really good job in deferring money and being sort of ahead of the curve when it comes to contract negotiations. They're really astute. And whether it's Prague, Marate, I don't know who you attribute it to, but it sort of reminds me of back in the day with Bill Walsh, where they would just do it one way and the rest of the NFL would do it another. But I mean, look, Nick Bosa set the price. Who else am I leaving out? There's
well, at the time there was record-setting deals like Fred Warner reset the market. I think before Shaq Leonard overtook him, but he did set the market at the time. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo reset the quarterback market back in the day. Kittle was at one point the highest paid tight end of the league. Kyle Juszczyk technically is the highest paid fullback in the league. And then I think even Trent Williams also reset the left tackle market. Like they've given players record-setting deals before. I don't think this is going to break the bank in that sense, but it is going to break the bank from the standpoint of you might have to pay Brandon Aiyuk $30 million per year. All right, I see you, Gene in Oakland. I see you, Jimmy in Bayview. We're going to get to you on the other side as we continue this conversation. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone, 95.7 The Game. Is this the most tense contract negotiation in recent memory for the 49ers? I think between Deebo Samuel, Nick Bosa, and Brandon Aiyuk, this is the most tense contract negotiation that I have seen since covering the 49ers. Do you feel the same? Do you think it indicates a place where the Niners might divert from Aiyuk? Do you think it's just much to do about nothing? When I hear the Niners not forgiving fines, that signals to me that they're not budging. And I also don't think Aiyuk is budging either. We'll continue to break it down coming up next on 95.7 The Game.
So, how's your research going?
Surprising! After I figured out the top-rated TVs in our price range, I went shopping for deals.
And who's the best?
It wasn't the internet, and it wasn't the warehouse club.
But?
It was video only. They had better deals on the Samsung, LG, and the Sony TVs that got the highest scores.
Better than online and at the club?
I know! Video only beat them all. And now we can afford an even better model for the same price. My research really paid off.
If we buy it video only.
Exactly. Otherwise, we'll be sorry.
At Video Only, you won't find huge stores with refrigerators or microwaves, but you will find the best deals on top-rated TVs, soundbars, and monitors. Shop around. Just make sure you visit Video Only, because if you don't,
you'll be sorry.
In Mountain View, San Mateo, Union City, Dublin, and San Rafael. Video Only.
At Shane Company, we'll help you design an engagement ring as unique as your love story. We have the widest selection of diamonds and gemstones for you to choose from, and you can compare them side by side right here in our store. Only at Shane Company can you sift through exquisite diamonds, rubies, and a rainbow of sapphires in a variety of shapes and sizes. We'll help you create your dream engagement ring no matter your price range. Choose the ring setting that speaks to your style, from classic to modern to vintage. We offer so many ways to personalize your ring. Pick your favorite center stone, add a decorative crown and a custom engraving, or select a perfectly preset ring that's ready to go. At Shane Company, our jewelers know how much your ring means to you. They hand-set each center stone with precision and pride in our jeweler's workshop, so you can feel confident knowing your ring is crafted with the greatest care and comes with an unmatched free lifetime warranty that lets you know we'll always be here for you. Your love story deserves to shine bright. Shane Company, your friend and jeweler.
Listen to what Dave Ryan says about Andro 400.
Andro 400, I really love it. It's amazing to me that I feel so good. I've lost 50 pounds. I was a size 38 waist. I've gone down to a 32 waist. My mood has changed. I don't get stressed out. It gave me so much more energy to walk, energy to play sports. Everything is starting to work again, just like I'm 25. My wife is happy. I'm so happy. I'm just a completely different man. I'm taking this stuff to the grave with me.
Men, have you lost energy and gained belly fat? Are you feeling stressed out? Fight back with Andro 400, the safe, natural, and inexpensive way to increase your testosterone. For over a decade, Andro 400 has helped men lose belly fat, gain energy, and feel 20 years younger. Go to andro400.com. andro400.com or call 888-400-0435. 888-400-0435.
95.7 The Game would like to remind you not to text and drive. Presented by Habas Law. Injuries happen every day. Habas Law believes that no one should suffer because of someone else's carelessness. If you've been wronged, Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURED or visit habaslaw.com.
Our lives aren't like they used to be. They're busier. Early morning Zooms, grabbing coffee to make that in-office meeting, getting to your kid's soccer game on time. Life is different, and so is advertising. To reach any audience, you need your message out there in all media, broadcast to streaming, on screens, and right to the ears of your customers. And that's what we do at Odyssey. Let's build a media campaign that targets the customers you know and want to reach more of, right here in our community. Advertise with Odyssey. Visit ads.odyssey.com.
I'm Bob Burke, founder and chairman of Burke America Parts Group, a family of brands that includes RepairClinic.com, an appliance and HVAC parts solution company that's grown into an international brand. Before AmericanEagle.com, we partially launched a new technology platform developed by another firm. American Eagle helped take our technology to a whole new level with digital marketing, software development, and business insights into our key markets, appliances, HVAC, and outdoor power equipment, and did so both on time and on budget. AmericanEagle.com has the resources, experience, and talent needed to produce solutions. Our new technology platform, developed by AmericanEagle.com, has produced tremendous results with higher traffic, conversion, engagement, and online revenue. If you have any home repairs you need to take care of, check us out at RepairClinic.com. If you need a world-class website or technology project, then I would highly recommend AmericanEagle.com.
Call AmericanEagle.com at 773-NETWORK. That's AmericanEagle.com, 773-NETWORK.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM in HD1 San Francisco on Odyssey Sports Station. Always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch, and YouTube. Powered by First NorCal Credit Union. Now back to 95.7 The Game.
That Andre Nicotina Lost Hawks beat is one of my absolute favorites. And as a city boy, Dan Devone,
I'm down.
I'm sure you know a little something about Nick.
I'm all over it. First time I heard of it.
Andre Nicotina is San Francisco's finest. Shout out Carter Chickering behind the glass. Evan Giddings with you on Saturdays here on 95.7 The Game. One more hour to go. I got 2 hours of caffeination in me, and I am ready to rock for our final hour up until noon every single Saturday. 888-957-9570 is the number.
After last
a
night,
cleanse.
Coffee today.
No, this is when we keep it rolling. I don't think you understand, Dan. I am on cloud 9. And it might be because I got nothing in my stomach except for coffee and water, but black coffee.
I don't want to revisit last night. You cracked me up. All right, let's go, man. Let's finish strong, as I like to say. We're on the bell lap. You can see the tape. You got to push to the tape.
Is that a horse racing reference?
What, the bell lap?
Yeah.
No, I think that has to do with the 440 or, the Olympics are coming up. So usually when you get into that last lap, right? And you hear the little bell go off, ding, ding, and everybody sort of stands. Sort of like the horse race. You come to the top of the stretch.
Well, no, I just thought about it because I'm going to try to get out to Golden Gate Fields for the final run this weekend. Yeah, they're tearing it down, man.
By the way,
it's sad.
They're doing it's the Alcatraz triathlon this weekend.
Ooh.
So
You ever participated?
No, hell no. I don't do triathlons. Are you kidding me? But I was, so as you get older, you realize that there's certain things you're just not going to do. Like I just can never be that person. And I'm not judging, but I could never be. So this
a triathlete?
7 a.m. No, God bless triathletes. You do you. But 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm riding my bike down to the Dolphin Club, and then I ride my bike from the Dolphin Club over here.
You take polar plunges at like 6 a.m.
Yeah, so
you're a different breed.
So I'm riding, and they've got it all cordoned off because the riders for the triathlon, it's that stage, right? They're going down the Marina Greens, and they're just flying, right? And so you have people on the side. Now, this is 7 o'clock in the morning that are bundled up, and I'm assuming that they don't have family or friends that are in this race, but they're there just to cheer on the runners or the racers. And I just said to myself, without passing judgment, that I could never be that person. Like I could never sit in the cold, in the fog, holding an American flag and a cowbell in the other hand going, yes, go, while they're going, 75 miles an hour and they can barely even register what it is that you're saying. I just said to myself, I could never be that person on the sidelines cheering for people as they run by. You see them in marathons and Tour de France. Here, drink my water as you go by on your bike.
You would never want to hand Lance Armstrong a bottle of water?
No, I'd punch him.
And what are the
tackle him.
One of the 18 checkpoints. Sorry, I feel like I just
couldn't
dug
be that
something
guy,
up.
Man. I could never be the person on the sideline. You know what I'm saying?
Well, but you do strike me as somebody that, I don't know, might be present for like one of the F1 races in Monaco. Like I could see it. I could see it. I could see it dapped up. In fact, I might be wearing my Sunday best to the horse races later today.
Oh, that's right, man. That is awesome. Bay Meadows is officially closing.
But but is it the same concept though? Like, so you're not going to hand someone a bottle of water. You're not going to cheer them on from the sideline. You don't have to use an American flag to do it or a horn, but you're going to be willing to watch a car race by you and you're just seeing them for like 3 seconds.
Yeah, but bro, I'm not in the pit crew. I'm not standing on the side. Like they're cheering on these people. Like it's not about, oh, you're in first place, way to go, go, go. No, this is just, they want to be support. I'm not supporting an F1 race. I'm there to see a winner or a loser. I'm there to see the maneuvering.
You're not going to cheer on your guy? I mean, I know you got probably an investment in one of the cars, but...
Well, the good thing about Monaco
Mercedes,
and a lot of those F1 races is that they'll do it traditionally through the streets of the specific towns like Monaco. They used to have a race out in Vancouver, Canada that was literally, and they do it in Montreal once a year, where it's literally in the streets of downtown, which they convert into the contours of what is an F1 race.
Singapore really cool also does that.
Singapore, yeah.
Ooh, the real Fast and Furious. We got to get that up Market Street or down the Embarcadero. Dude, I'm telling you, those cars will be flying, man. I mean, they shut it down for marathons where apparently Dan won't show up to, cheer on his buddies, but...
Could you... Seriously, I mean, big chick, could you get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and with your significant other or whomever, bring a son or a daughter and saying, we're going to go stand on the sidelines and we're going to cheer the racers. Well, Daddy, do we have any family or friends that are racing in it? No, we're just going to cheer and lend support because that's the good thing to do. We're going to make them feel good, which is, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying I'm not that cat.
Yeah, that's true. What if I was running a marathon, Dan? Would you cheer me on?
No, I'd be there for you.
From your penthouse?
I'm your boy, man. I might be the guy who just slings you with a tomato so we can laugh about it while you're stoned and drunk the next day.
Oh, how do you feel about cheering on NFL players at training camp? Like, would you go to training camp to cheer on one of your guys? Like, because I see someone like George Kittle actually does make me want to, at training camp, like be, I don't know, a fan. Like the way that he interacts with the crowd. He'll throw stuff to fans out there. He'll actually respond to them. If you scream Kittle, he'll give you like a wink and a smile. Like that kind of stuff I think is pretty cool as opposed to, a marathon.
You know what's funny is that I saw, so David Lombardi's Dolphin Club guy. I love David Lombardi. He's a good dude, man. He's actually a serious swimmer. So he swam.
I saw him biking through Cole Valley the other day, I think.
Yeah, he lives out that way. So
of course he does.
So he is he was a swimmer in Stanford. He wasn't like I don't think he was on the number 1 team.
Ledecky?
Maybe. But he's a swimmer. He's a big dude. David Lombardi's like, he's not as big as Big Chick, but he's in the neighborhood. So anyways.
Wow, dude.
Two floors down.
But the thing is with Lombardi, so he on his YouTube channel, so he was shooting basically sort of the players interacting. And you're looking at this and you're like, my goodness, look at this. We have a tendency to forget this, but then when you see it in something like OTAs, and there's Trent Williams and Nick Bosa, they're good friends, and they're just hamming up, and they're talking, and you're like, God, those two guys are on the same team. Wow, you forget how good this 49er team is. And then in walks McCaffrey saying, what's up with you guys? What's going on? You're like, God, McCaffrey, Trent Williams, and Bosa, like teams would salivate to have these guys. And then just flashing through the screen was George Kittle doing some sort of maneuver. He's running through tires or something. And you're like, oh yeah, and there's George Kittle. Like the 49ers, I know we know it, but it's sometimes a sobering reminder when you just see them all out on the same field and just sort of interacting or doing whatever it is that they're doing in their shorts during OTAs. And you're like, my God, that is a very good team. When you talk about windows being open and winning Super Bowls, like I don't know how often you're going to see guys like that just sort of hanging out on a pitch on a football field.
No, I mean, it's Ocean's 11. Like it's a star-studded cast. I mean, or 12, 13, whichever one outside of number 8. That one can be left alone. But it's a star-studded cast. You're seeing so many big-name players roll through the Niners' doors that it does make it, I think, even more frustrating, the fact that they have not got it done and won a Super Bowl. They've been so close the last 5 or 6 years, or 5 years under Kyle Shanahan, that I guess just it pushes it to the next season in regards to the importance and the urgency. And I think that's why you hear someone like George Kittle say the state of the franchise is win now, is win a Super Bowl, because there's nothing else to check. Like even going down Brock Purdy's resume. This is a quarterback who's played now 1 full season in the NFL, and he's already been to an NFC title game, a Super Bowl. He's been a top 5 MVP candidate. He's broken, I think, just about every passing record possible for 49ers quarterback all time. Like there's nothing left for this guy, statistically speaking, to capture. Like his accolade list is already as long as a lot of 10-year veterans, and he's going into his 2nd full season as starter. I think that's why there's so much urgency and importance that just keeps rolling over to the next season because of that A-list cast that you just talked about, Dan.
Yeah. And listen, I think that when you think of Brock Purdy, the one question I have is that you just talked about all the records that he set, the 113 passer rating. Is that sustainable? Like, I don't think that if Brock Purdy sort of, falls off the cliff a little bit here, we shouldn't be alarmed, because I don't know if he's able to sustain that over the course of his career. But I think that a lot of people are expecting so much more. And I'm not saying that he's going to be Jimmy Garoppolo, who had his best year was his first full year with the Niners back in 2019 when they went to the Super Bowl and eventually lost to Kansas City. But there are some sort of comparisons that you can draw from those two when you think about their first full season in the NFL. And Jimmy Garoppolo never replicated that sort of season, was never able to be that guy. Is there a little bit of that going on with Brock Purdy in year 3?
I think some of that had to do with Jimmy Garoppolo's just injury past. I mean, it felt like he just got more and more broken over the course of time. Like he just slowly deteriorated as a quarterback, whether it was the ACL, which is unfortunate, the shoulder issues that were continuing to nag. Like I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is as near good of a quarterback as Brock Purdy was, certainly not out of the gates. But I do think that injuries had a big reason to do with his fall off. Brock Purdy, meanwhile, by the way, he did all of that last season after getting off-season surgery on his elbow.
I forgot about that.
Like he at this point last year, he was in a sling. So he has an entire offseason to get ready. I don't know if statistics are going to prove how much better he is as a quarterback, though. And that's why, to bring it full circle to Brandon Aiyuk, I feel like I want him there. Someone last segment, one of our callers, again, 888-957-9570 is the number, brought up how he wants to see Brock Purdy without his top wide receiver to see if he's worth the investment of $50 million or somewhere in the ballpark. I don't want to see that. And I don't want to see it because, not that I'm afraid that Brock Purdy is going to fail, but I just think that this offense isn't optimal without all of its embarrassment of riches. One of the reasons the 49ers are so good offensively is, yes, Kyle Shanahan is a quote-unquote genius, and he can turn water into wine and all the rest, but it's also because when you have all of your dudes out there, McCaffrey, Aiyuk, Debo, Kittle, let's say, someone's going to be open. If you take one of those pieces away, I just feel like it has a trickle-down effect, and it makes the offense less potent, no matter how good Brock Purdy is.
Well, how do you explain Kansas City then? And I know a lot of it's Patrick Mahomes.
Well, I would argue that even though let's take Patrick Mahomes. His first full season in the NFL, he threw for 5,000 yards, threw 50 touchdowns. That was his best statistical season. He was the MVP, took the league by storm. I think he lost in the AFC Championship game, but he was a revelation right out of the gate. Okay, Patrick Mahomes has not put up similar statistics in a full season since his first season as starter. I would argue he's a better quarterback than he was in 2019.
Yeah, but the comparison I'm trying to make is, how do you explain him winning Super Bowls while you continue to strip him of his best wide receivers? And so if you lose Brandon Aiyuk, I don't think it's the end of the world. Now, I know you'd like to be, at optimal best with everybody being healthy and good to go and under contract, but I don't think that Brandon Aiyuk is at the same level of a Debo or means as much to even a Kittle or a Trent Williams and a Christian McCaffrey. And again, I think that when you think about Kansas City and you think about Patrick Mahomes, now listen, Patrick Mahomes is one of one, all right? So I don't want to make any comparisons between him and Brock Purdy, and that's the reason, the large reason as to why they continue to be relevant when you lose wide receivers. But I do think that without Brandon Aiyuk, if it really gets to, if it push comes to shove and he hardlines and says, I want Justin Jefferson money, I think you're going to be okay if you go into the season and Ricky Pearsall emerges as a guy that the 49ers will still be in that Super Bowl conversation.
With Ricky Pearsall as a rookie receiver.
Yes.
Interesting. I mean, if
I don't know anything about it, but
if Ricky Pearsall is that good.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying he doesn't have to be that good, but if he can be somebody that's an impactful player, I'm not even talking about supplanting Brandon Aiyuk's numbers and or being better than Debo Samuel, but if he's good to go along with Juwan Jennings and everything else you have, I don't think you miss a beat.
Interesting. Let's run it by Gene in Oakland's been hanging on. Gene, what's going on? You're on with Dan and Evan on 95.7 The Game. How are you?
I'm fine, fellas. So, first of all, I'm one of those people that believes you need to keep this team and keep its critical players intact this year. This is, in my mind, their best chance to win a Super Bowl since they won their last Super Bowl, okay? And they're not likely to have as good a chance next year when you consider all the personnel changes we're probably looking at. So, look, I tend to agree with you, Evan, that this may very well be the tensest negotiation because the others were out in public. We could see what was going on. Everybody was open, about their feelings. This is quiet, and now with the Niners not willing to pick up the fines, I'm afraid this is going to become acrimonious. And at some point, I don't know. I'd be afraid of Aiyuk just saying, you know what, I want out of here, one way or another, and I'm tired of this. Become emotional instead of financial. All right, we need Aiyuk because, listen, he's not one of the top 5 players on the team right now, but he's critical, and he fills a position that's not easily filled if he's gone. All right, if he's gone, do we really think that Jawan Giddings or a rookie and Ricky Pearsall is going to be able to step in and do what he did? It took him 2 or 3 years to get to where he was. Talking about Aiyuk, I think it's unrealistic to expect that to happen. Sure, he's not elite, but hey, he was second team All-Pro, so he's a damn good receiver. I think we need to keep him. And if I could just relate one story that keeps coming to mind, give me a moment here. I go back 12 years, and I know this isn't a direct comparison, but I remember the OKC situation, when they had Durant and they had Westbrook in their prime.
Harden.
And they had an emerging star by the name of Harden, right? And he left all for, the lack of the ownership wanting to pay another $2 or $3 million. Of course, it was worth more then, but still, it wasn't much. And they've lived to regret it ever since. I don't want to see that happen to this team. It is the here and now. We have to keep our best players here. And I believe that at the end of the day, somehow the Niners will be able to do it. So,
thanks, Gene. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think that the Harden comp is interesting. I mean, the OKC kind of chose between him and Serge Ibaka, but he's right. I mean, it was just a money issue that couldn't keep that team together. I think this is
James Harden wasn't James Harden at that point.
Well, he was a sixth man.
Yeah, he was good, but he hadn't emerged to be that guy, which I guess is what Gene's point is.
Well, and maybe that also to dig a little bit deeper into that is what Brandon Aiyuk actually wants. Like we haven't necessarily posed the question of, is Brandon Aiyuk happy with his role in this offense? Like he's grown and his numbers have reflected that his first, 4 seasons, but is he happy being, in his own words, the fourth option in a run-first offense? I mean, that's what he tweeted out, I think, at the beginning of this offseason, or maybe it was last offseason. It was something kind of cryptic on Twitter. And he's been using social media a little bit more as a weapon to kind of combat, I guess, the Niners' negotiating tactics. To me, also he mentioned acrimony building. I think that's a possibility if these fines aren't picked up. I would assume that if they sign him, that they would also relieve him of the $100,000 that he was fined for not showing up at minicamp this week, or I would hope that he would, because if I'm Brandon Aiyuk and you don't pick up that money, when last year Nick Bosa held out almost into the season and they picked up his minicamp fines for not showing up, I would be pissed. In fact, I might not want to play for you because that's a level of respect that you can't even show me that you showed to your other star player who's also worth big bucks. So it's not necessarily a favoritism game. I just think it's a sign of respect that the Niners have to show Brandon Aiyuk if they want to keep him around long term. If they pay him and they force him to pay those fines, that does, to me, build some acrimony between the two sides.
Well, maybe it's the 49ers' way of saying, listen, we don't think you're as important as Bosa and or Deebo Samuel. And maybe it's their way of sort of showing their hand that they're willing to go into another direction. The fact that they went ahead and they drafted Pearsall may have also been another indicator. I don't know. I mean, I'm obviously not privy to these meetings, but if you're to sort of read between the lines, maybe that's the thought process. Maybe they're more along the lines of what it is that I'm saying, that we're good enough with what it is that we have, the pieces that we have, and the fact that we run the football predominantly more than most teams, that as good as Brandon Aiyuk is, he is the fourth or fifth option on this football team. And that's just the way it is. And we're not going to change things because of him. And maybe, again, it's them revealing that we're going to be just fine going forward without Brandon Aiyuk. Now, that may not be the case. I think part of this, we're all sort of prisoners of the moment. I know that if this was 2 years ago, the Debo thing was serious. I mean, Debo again coming off of that huge season and the threat of him walking out the door. And Debo, didn't he wash his account? I want to say
he asked for a trade.
Yeah. So I mean that's about as close as it gets. And the same thing with Bosa, who wasn't. Not only is he holding out, he wasn't even in the state, man. And you thought about just in terms of proximity, he was a big Floridian guy, and it's just like a lot of those things were adding up that he wasn't coming back. So this is all part of it. And I think in the here and now, yeah, it seems pretty tense, but I think that cooler heads will prevail, and Brandon Aiyuk most likely will be on this football team. But I'm entertaining worst case scenario. You're a better football team. Don't get me wrong with Brandon Aiyuk, obviously.
Yeah.
But if he's not there, to me, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider the 49ers non-Super Bowl contenders because they don't have Brandon Aiyuk. But I think one of the big reasons why many people would say they have the most talent in the NFL is because Brandon Aiyuk is a part of that. That's why they have the best weapons in the game. That's why I think a lot of people perceive them as a Super Bowl frontrunner out of the NFC. That if they don't make it out of the NFC, I feel like that would be a massive failure because of their embarrassment of riches this season.
Oh, yeah.
Also because of who they could lose next year. But two things off that. Number one, when Deebo Samuel asked for a trade a couple off seasons ago, I mean, it's obviously a big deal. But to me, that was always a negotiating tactic. That was a way to get what he wanted because I always felt like the Niners were going to pay Deebo.
Well, it's easy to say now.
Well, no, but at the time, Dan, there was no other option. Like you didn't have McCaffrey or Aiyuk or Kittle was not as productive, but he was a big part of the team. Like Deebo Samuel was your offense. Remember, Jimmy Garoppolo was the quarterback. So Brock Purdy wasn't here yet. And you had to basically say, like, are we going to get rid of our best offensive player? There were people that were calling Deebo Samuel the MVP of the team coming off that season when they made the NFC Championship. So to me, he always was going to get paid by the Niners. It just was a matter of when and how much. Now, if Brandon Aiyuk came out tomorrow and asked for a trade, I would believe him more than I believe Deebo Samuel when he asked for a trade. I don't think that's a negotiating tactic if Aiyuk says tomorrow, deal me to Pittsburgh. Like I believe that he's going to stand on that.
Well, I think it's easy to suffer for some revisionist history because when Deebo asked for the trade, yeah, we can look at it in retrospect and say, well, we knew the Niners were always going to pay him. But again, if you're to relive that, if today's professional athlete wants out the door, then more often than not, you have to accommodate him. I mean, it happens time and time again in the NBA, and you'll see it from time to time in the NFL. If Deebo's like, no, I want to go back to the South, right? Like I want to play, I'm done with this, and I want out the door. Then the 49ers, at some point, somebody is going to call chicken, and the Niners are going to have to deal it. So again, if you're to relive in that moment when your best player is asking for a trade, it's easy now that they already paid him to say, well, all along I knew that the 49ers were going to step up and give him what it is that he wanted. But again, when today's player asks for a trade, more often than not, I'm saying probably in the 80 percentile, they get what it is that they asked for.
And we can get into a little bit more on the other side, but real quick before we got to hit this break, I want to ask you, because I actually don't think it applies much to the NFL. Like, did you think that the Ravens were going to trade Lamar Jackson?
No, I think it was entertaining. I think it was, if Lamar Jackson continued down that road, that I want out. It was. I mean, again, last year, if you were to talk to people in Baltimore, it was scaring the hell out of them.
Well, but I think that was the whole point. Like, the whole point is to scare the crap out of a franchise, because in football, it's not guaranteed. Your contract is not fully guaranteed, so that's kind of the tactic you have to use. But Dan's long-awaited Dan Hurley rant will come on the other side. I'll take a flamethrower out as well. There was an interesting piece of news I want to run by Devone on the other side. Also, some news about the Warriors kind of trickled out this week as we get set for free agency, less than a month away. A lot of contract decisions that the Warriors are going to have to choose from. One final segment coming up on the other side here on Saturdays on 95.7 The Game. 888-957-9570 is the number. My name is Evan Giddings. That's Dan Devone. We're back after this.
Are you curious about who offers the best deals on top-rated Samsung, LG, and Sony TVs? The answer is surprising. It's not online, and it's not the Warehouse Club.
Like, if the Lakers are trying to be Boston, believe it or not, as odd as that may sound, and build their team like giving Brad Stevens all the money in the world in that extended contract, like he's the one guy who could change the entire outlook and franchise and just change the culture instead of these stopgaps for a year and a half, like the Luke Waltons of the world or the Vogels or the Darvin Hams.
Vogel's a champion, Dan.
Yeah, well, no, he won a title, but this is a guy that can. He's a generational, like a 10-year guy.
Yeah, he is someone you want to build a program. I just think it's interesting that a lot of the head coaches from college don't tend to pan out. Like, I mean, Billy Donovan won back-to-back chips at Florida. I don't think he's a bad head coach.
I put him in the top tier of head coaches in the NBA.
He's a solid head coach. I don't think he's made the difference for some of the teams that have had talent. I'm not saying he's on one now. Obviously, Calipari didn't work out. Rick Pitino was someone who alienated a player like Chauncey Billups in Boston.
He was in New York for a while.
I mean, I'm just trying to think of other guys that have gone from college to pros that have really worked out. Everyone's kind of comparing him to Steve Kerr, and I don't necessarily see it because though Steve Kerr didn't have head coaching experience, he at least ran a team. Like he was the general manager of an NBA team that was successful. So
that's what he wanted. He went and got Shaquille O'Neal. He wasn't very good as a GM.
Well, I mean, they made the playoffs 2 or 3 years he was GM.
Yeah, but I mean, is that what we're measuring, him being a good GM? I mean, I guess.
I mean, he's got more playoff appearances as GM than Farhan Zaidi.
That's true. But it was before the Steve Nash championships, I guess that's what I should.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I just think it's interesting. Like, the one thing that I draw from that, I guess, courtship of the Lakers to Dan Hurley is that signals to me that the Lakers are a team or a franchise that's looking beyond LeBron James.
Yeah.
And it does make me wonder how much the Warriors are looking beyond Steph Curry or their superstar. Like, is there some... Now, I'm not saying they need to make a head coaching change, but if the Lakers are willing to look beyond just this 1 year, I also kind of feel like the Warriors should be willing to do that too, because I see them as being in similar places.
Well, they are.
The franchises.
They are, which is why I think you saw Steve Kerr sign for 2 years and no more. So that to me was the indicator that, that's the cutoff point where we're looking to move Steve Kerr and go beyond that of Steph Curry. It's time to bring in, a new way of thinking, a new way of doing this. Well, just to revisit why I find the Dan Hurley thing so amusing. You know how this all went down? This is how simplistic Jeannie Buss and why the Los Angeles Lakers are the Los Angeles Lakers. And clearly when it comes to their front office, Pelinka and company, and it was Magic Johnson, are a bunch of bozos just running into each other. You want to know why they moved off of J.J. Redick and suddenly said, oh, Dan Hurley.
Well, Hurley's got to say yes. I mean, they might come running back to J.J.
There's a good chance
Runaway
that he
bride.
goes back to
Julia
stores
Roberts.
and says, I'm done. Look at because there's reports that much like that of Jim Harbaugh for the last 2 years would leverage the NFL. He got those new deals with Michigan. There's rumors that Connecticut is putting together this lofty package to keep one Danny Hurley.
Well, I think Ariema just got a 5-year extension as the women's head coach.
But here's what's so funny about the Los Angeles Lakers. While they were all in on J.J. Redick, I mean, because think about it. Why wouldn't you offer Danny Hurley this deal much sooner than this? Like, why not? Why wouldn't you have done this months ago?
Maybe you didn't know he was interested.
Your guy. If he was your guy, you at least make the offer. You're the Los Angeles Lakers. I want to tell you why they did it. And this is fact. And this is how simple they are. You want to know why? Because they were in on J.J. Redick. Guess who was on J.J. Redick's podcast? The biggest mistake, the biggest booking mistake that J.J. Redick could have ever done, or his producer.
Dan Devone? What?
No, it was Dan Hurley.
Oh.
And so Hurley goes on J.J. Redick's podcast, and J.J. Redick he's going to be the Laker head coach. And he starts talking circles around J.J. Redick. And J.J. Redick's looking at him going, holy crap, man, you know your stuff. And the Lakers are looking at him like, you know what, why do we want J.J. Redick? Why don't we want the guy he's interviewing who's Dan Hurley? And from that point forward, they're like, Dan Hurley, why did you think about coming out to Brentwood for a weekend and hanging out with us? I'm telling you, that's how simple this organization is. It wasn't until that podcast appearance where they recognized just how good this guy is, where they said, why don't we get rid of J.J. Redick and go after the guy that he's kissing up to, who happens to be one Dan Hurley?
I think the idea of, essentially your submission of resume, like, you know, you're applying for a job, is going on the competition's podcast. I do think if that really is, God, you follow the breadcrumbs better than most, Dan. You were on the Bronny thing earlier than most, and now you're on Dan Hurley usurping JJ Redick by using his own platform against him. The ultimate judo move by one Dan Hurley.
But I don't think he was lobbying for the job. It just sort of organically happened that throughout this interview, the Lakers are like, the hell?
So you're saying Rob Pelinka is an avid listener of Old Man of the Three?
I think it just virally somehow got to him and or Jeannie Buss, and they just realized that this is the guy. By the way, man, just go listen to this guy talk.
He's great.
Just to bring it back home, he watches everything. He was talking about this year's team and some of the motions that they run or some of the plays that they run, and he mentioned Kyle Shanahan. Like, he does not leave any stone unturned. He's like, Kyle Shanahan will come out. First of all, I'm like, Kyle Shanahan? Like, what? So he's stealing from everybody. He's like, Kyle Shanahan will come out in the same formations and yet run different plays. So defensively, you don't know. He's not tipping his hand because you're coming out with a slot and two to the right, and you're lining up with a strong. You're the strong side left with your tight end. He's like, he'll do that, and off of that, there's so many variations. And so he saw that, and he's like, we need to do something similar to our basketball. And then he went into this basketball talk. I'm like, my God, dude, you are definitely a cut above. Not only that, so he watches Kyle Shanahan, who's a big fan of, and he gets these ideas and what he needs to do to implement new innovative ideas with Connecticut. But he also watches a lot of international basketball. And he's talking about FIFA, and he's talking about all these things internationally, what they do. And he's bringing up Turkey. He's like, well, what happens in Turkey basketball in the semifinals this year? So they're running this guy like, I was thinking we need to do this. He is, once in a while, you get these minds, and you get these people that are a little bit different. They think a little differently. I think Phil Jackson was one of those guys, and Popovich clearly was one of those guys. And then you have all the disciples like that of a Steve Kerr and company. I think Danny Hurley is that guy. Or the next guy.
Well, it's interesting. You talk about the different influences. I remember Steve Kerr speaking about, because I think what you're talking about is, I don't know, trying to basically alter or transform the way the game is already played, or just kind of put your own spin on it. I think that's what Steve Kerr did when he got to Golden State. But one thing he talked about is the influence of like soccer. So take like some of the great Barcelona teams, Piqué, Xavi, Iniesta, obviously Messi, but like Puyol, like all of those great teams that he would watch, and he would watch the way that they move the ball.
Yeah.
And being able to transfer that application from soccer to basketball was a big reason he felt like he had immediate success, is being able to change the way that the Warriors moved without the ball and with the ball, and how you don't really have to run a ton of plays when it's all off of feel. And I think that's the same concept with Hurley. It's just interesting to hear him, though, because, so Dan, I mean, we've talked about, past experiences and whatnot. I actually was the UConn pre and post, kind of like studio host in 2019 when Hurley was his first year at UConn.
Right?
Yeah. So I got to...
I cannot chart your career, man.
Right when he came over from Rhode Island. Like 6 years ago, this guy was coaching Rhode Island.
Yeah.
7 years ago, he was coaching high school.
Wasn't he in Wagner for a little while?
He might have been, but I just remember he took those Rhode Island teams farther than they'd ever gone before. And then he came to UConn, and everybody was so excited because he was able to get a couple top recruits, but he was really smart. And I do have to say, listening to him during coaches' shows and like having a chance to kind of, like I had to go back and listen, produce, cut things. The guy's somebody I would want to play for.
Yeah.
Like the guy's just somebody that exudes confidence. And so that's why I do think he'd be a great hire for the Lakers. I just think it's interesting that they might be willing to put the needs of LeBron James on the back burner to the needs of the organization. I'm not sure, who knows? Hurley could just be using his leverage. He's going to go take his bag with UConn and just be back and try and run a three-peat in college. But if he takes that job, I do think it signals from Jeannie Buss that she wants to look beyond the current superstar, that it's not just about maximizing LeBron and AD, it's about building a program. And that is, in many ways, I think the inflection point at which the Warriors are at, choosing whether to emphasize and maximize Steph Curry this season, the rest of his time, or we want to do that to some extent, but that can't be just the sole focus. Like, you're not a fan of bringing in a middle-aged superstar to help Steph. I think that's the move if you want to maximize him. But if I'm taking notes from the Lakers about what they want to do with their future, well, if I'm the Warriors, I need to start looking 5 years. I need to start looking a little bit further down the line.
Well, then you got to get rid of Steve Kerr now. Because
I
Steve
wouldn't
Kerr's,
say now.
Well, but that's the harbinger, if you will. That's Steve Kerr is in the middle of all of that because Steve Kerr is not changing the way he does things. Steve Kerr is still trying to play 5-out basketball. Steve Kerr still wants to play transitional basketball with a team that's in their mid-30s. And I don't think he's changing. He's not coming in as the new Dan Hurley. So if you're going to look beyond Steph Curry, I think you've got to whitewash the whole thing. It starts with Steve Kerr. You've got to change philosophies because they're entrenched of doing things one way, and that's Steve Kerr basketball, which has been so successful. So it's understandable why they would be so slow to move away from that. But the reality, really, if you were to step outside of that realm and just look at the Golden State Warriors, it does not make sense that a bunch of guys in their mid-30s want to compete by running up and down the floor with guys who are generations younger than them.
No, but I also think the Warriors are in a position where they need to get back into, I don't know, the limelight somehow. Like, I don't think the Lakers making a move at head coach. I mean, it's the most sought after position in the NBA. I think if you're a coach, I mean, you want to be the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. But like that to me is like that does bring the show back to LA. They're always a show, but to make that kind of move to go out and get the back-to-back college national champ, to get someone who appears to have a pretty damn good head on his shoulders and can be someone that you envision being around for, like they've had 7 head coaches in 10 years. I would imagine he's going to be longer, than most of those guys. Even Frank Vogel won a championship. But like, how do the Warriors kind of find, is it a player? I don't know. Is it something they choose to involve themselves in? Like, honestly, I think there's a lot of people that this summer, like the most exciting thing happening at Chase Center might be the Valkyries, who you found out about earlier today. You found out about earlier today.
Come on,
they got 13,000 season tickets coming their way, Dano.
I'm all about the WNBA.
I know you are. No, you're all about the W. What about her? I mean,
do you have any thoughts? I think that's sort of so fascinating, man. Like, because there's so many layers to it.
I know, it's great. I think it's great for the sport. I mean, it's the reason why a lot of people are watching.
Right? Yeah.
But all of it though, like not just her, and I don't necessarily look at the way that women are treating her, or the way that a lot of men are covering her is necessarily, wrong. I'm not one to gatekeep. I don't like when people do that. There's a lot of people coming into the W and into this new space that we're all trying to learn about. And it feels like we're getting a crash course on, rookie hazing, stardom, expectations, just basically everything. It's a brand new sport to a lot of people, and I love every second of it.
Yeah, but there's also the pushback. Those people like me, I know about the WNBA. I appreciate the WNBA, but if you were to ask me, do I watch games? Am I a fan? I'd probably tell you no. But now, am I? Yeah, I find a lot of this intriguing, but there are some that would push back like, well, you know what, Dan, there's no room for you. You weren't here 3 years ago, bro. Like, you weren't a part of this, some 5 years ago. Why are you jumping on the bandwagon now? Well, because you're relevant now.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't really watch hockey, but if something was to happen with hockey where we're talking about it, well, bring it on.
If you can go scalp tickets for the Rangers game, you're going to be at Game 6,
Thank you. Hey, listen, man, I didn't really pay attention to golf until Tiger came along. There's nothing wrong with that. That's sort of like where we're at as sports fans. But there seems to be this begrudgingly, well, listen, you're a little bandwagon. Well, hell yeah, I am when it comes to the WNBA because you guys weren't really relevant a couple of years ago. There's nothing wrong with me saying that.
No, I mean, well, it's also a little bit of the West Coast mentality. Like, when sports capture our attention, it's usually because things are going well. There's so many different things to do out here. There's so many different ways to spend your time and money that, yeah, you do need to deserve our attention. Like, you do need to compete. Otherwise, I might lose interest. I think that the WNBA is interesting because I also think it's a little bit of what the NBA is looking for and kind of missing right now, which is this idea of a hero and a villain.
Yeah.
Like
Angel Reese and...
Well, I mean, Angel Reese or Kennedy Carter, I forget who it was. Kennedy Carter, who was the woman who kind of hip checked Caitlin Clark. Like, people are framing her as this villain, and I don't think she necessarily is. I think that's just how she plays. Might have been dirty, might have been clean. I don't know.
That was dirty, but there's nothing wrong with that.
But it's drawing eyes because people are interested in the game within the game.
Exactly.
Like the NBA Finals Game 1, I think Boston's a bad matchup for Dallas, and I think they can switch, and Luke is going to have a tough time getting a shot. Like, there's no game within the game. Like, there's nobody to root against except for you hope that the Celtics, who have been seemingly underachievers for the last half a decade, don't get over the top. Like, there's nothing about this NBA Finals series that really resonates with me. I would rather go watch Caitlin Clark because I don't know what's going to happen in that game. I just think it's fascinating.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I love the whole Angel Reese and the rivalry because it grew out of college and it's continuing now in the WNBA. Like, those storylines, I'm with you. Everybody's getting paid in the NBA and the NBA Finals, win or lose, right? And you get that sense, right? Like, yeah, Dallas would like to win this thing, but there are no subplots. It's not like back in the day where you had the bad boys and everybody hated Detroit, or it was Bird versus Magic, and there was really this sort of, there was the geographical rivalry of the East Coast versus the West Coast. The one thing, though, I do want to touch on, this idea of being a bandwagon or late to the party, there is that word, that phrase should not even be applied in 2024. If I want to be a bandwagon San Francisco Giant fan, if I'm one of those that, is down on Union Street and now suddenly it's fun socially to go to Giant games because they're winning, well, so be it. And you better open the doors and let me have a good time as well as anybody else. I don't want to hear any of this, you weren't here when this team was 20 games under 500, man. Where the hell were you, You want to know why? If you're going to charge, once again, $40 for a beer, and if you're going to have to make me take another mortgage out on the house because I want to take my family to a weekend series, if you're going to charge those prices, you're damn right that I'm not going to support this team when they're underwhelming or under 500. If you want to make it free, I'll come. But if you're going to charge those prices, don't call me a bandwagon. No, it's now suddenly you're worth my consumer dollar. It's not about being a bandwagon. It's about being a product that's worthy of me being separated from money in my wallet.
It's the same thing we do here with these Chrome microphones. Every single day we walk in and you say, what's the A block? Like, what's the hottest story? What are you hot on? What are you passionate about? And it might be Brandon Aiyuk's contract negotiations. It could be, the Giants beating Bruce Bochy. I don't know. It could be Caitlin Clark. But like, we have to decide as a team what we're going to talk about and why it is worth a listener's or a viewer's time. It's the same thing with bandwagon quote unquote fandom. Okay, if I have so many different sports to be interested in, why should I devote my time and effort to those sports if I'm not getting anything back? I have to feel some sort of two-way street, in my opinion, to feel invested as a fan. Yes, you're going to, appreciate your team and you're going to watch when they're down. If the 49ers are getting their ass kicked by, I don't know, the St. Louis Rams, the Los Angeles Rams, if they're down 38-0 in the third quarter, I'm turning the game off. That doesn't make me a bandwagon fan. That means I don't like to watch my team get their ass kicked up and down the field for 4 quarters. I feel like that's completely understandable. And so these people that are, I guess, trying to deflect, the Joe Schmo, the Dan Devone, the Evan Giddings from watching the WNBA or trying to figure out how we can get invested in the WNBA, I would say, welcome everyone. You're going to have some a-holes. You're going to have some people that don't get it, but you also might attract some people that do love the sport, and that can also then spread the word. Like, I feel like that's the whole point. This is something new for a lot of people, and it doesn't appear like it's going away. And I would also say the fact that Caitlin Clark is struggling in the beginning of her career, both statistically speaking, but also with, I guess, being ingratiated into the league or being hazed to some extent, that to me is interesting.
Yeah.
And that to me will keep my eye on her in her career because I want to see how she responds. I don't want to see someone that comes in and has just the most immediate success. It gets a little boring when someone wins all the time. I want to see someone who's a hero go down, get knocked off the top of the perch, and then have to rise back up. Caitlin Clark was, a phenomenon in college. Okay, how is she going to be in the pros? I want to watch that step of her career take place.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. There's the racial component too, which a lot of people don't want to go down and treat that with kid gloves. When you talk about the popularity of the sport, along comes this white girl from the Midwest who is suddenly perceived as the savior. And
don't
all
go
of a sudden,
Pat McAfee on me, Dan.
The WNBA. No, but there is a lot of reality to that. And understandably, that someone comes along that there's going to be some sort of inherent, like, well, what have you done? And there's been a lot of people before you, but I think I find it so fascinating. But at the end of the day, for me, I think I'm representative of a lot of fans out there. I suddenly find the WNBA, whether it's because of Caitlin Clark or the hatred towards or directed towards her, I find that intriguing. from an entertainment / sports perspective. And I watched a lot of her last game. They suck as a team, by the way.
Yeah, they're terrible.
They're not very good. And the schedule makers who put them up against some of the best, defenders in the WNBA.
They also played like the most games in the first month of the season.
I think she's averaging like 16 a game. It's not like she's been that bad.
Well, if we're being honest too, it is unfair for any collegiate women's basketball player who literally has to go from the draft into the pros. Like it's basically been 2 weeks. She played an entire college season.
That's crazy.
Made it to the national championship, got drafted a couple weeks later, and now is playing in front of 20,000 people. When you are, I don't know, well, I wasn't going to say Bronny James. When you are, whoever the number 1 draft pick is in the NBA this year, you get like 3 or 4 months to rev up and get your body prepared for what is going to be a grueling 82-game season. That is not afforded to someone like you.
No, and that certainly factors into all of this. And I also think that the fact that she has struggled in a weird way legitimizes the league. If she just stepped in and had the seamless transition from that of Iowa and then started going for 35 and dropping 15 dimes a night, you're like, okay, there's not a big difference between the collegiate level and that of the so-called pros in the WNBA. But the fact that she's getting knocked to the floor and that she's recognizing that the speed and the size of the players at this level is very different from the collegiate level, like that of the adjustment of any rookie who's stepping into the pros for the first time and seeing a fastball from a major leaguer as opposed to somebody down at double or triple A. Part of that to me lends credibility to the WNBA in sort of a weird way.
No, I mean, I also don't have an issue with the way that she's quote unquote being treated by her peers. Like it's a rough league. Like it's a professional league. When Ricky Pearsall steps on the field and goes over the middle for the first time, Darius Leonard's going to try and knock his block off. Like someone's going to come downhill and try and take this kid and welcome him to the league. So I feel like that's kind of what's happening. I just don't think we're used to seeing it on the female side.
Well, that's part of it.
And that's a little shocking.
Are you okay? They're fine. They're athletes. Stop.
I haven't heard Caitlin Clark complain.
No, and she's been, that's a great point. Like, I think that if she's taken this on the chin, and there's a lot that she can complain about, but and she's not even, she's got the $28 million, shoe deal. There's nobody who's even near that sort of contract in the WNBA. So there's a lot of resentment that's targeted her way. And I think in a weird way, she would tell you when no one's looking that she understands it and maybe to a certain degree has expected a lot of this, if not even more.
Probably. I mean, she's had the bullseye on her back, I think, since probably her junior season at Iowa, in regards to the finale with LSU and all the rest and the blowback. I think she's dealt with it well. I think the rest of her peers have also dealt with it well. Like, there's probably some jealousy. The league is also probably in a better place because of her. I think it's just a classic example of multiple things being equally true, and it's in a space that a lot of us are new to and haven't really had a chance to figure out our own opinions on. So I think it's what is great about sports, and I'm looking forward to continuing to watch and see where it goes because sports are the great story.
Who's going to call the play-by-play next year?
For the Valkyries?
Yeah.
Well, sore subject. No,
has it been decided?
I don't know. Actually, I actually don't know. I would
do you mind if I ask?
I would love to call games for a WNBA team.
I mean,
especially Paige Beckers is on the team next year.
Oh, is that right?
Well,
and that Cameron Brink is
probably going to be a top.
Cameron Brink is for real. I watched her play in LA.
Yeah, Stanford's own.
Yeah,
Cameron Brink's fantastic.
This rookie class is I think like one of those. Maybe it's not Bird and Magic coming into the league the same year, but I think it's gone a long way in terms of intriguing people like myself to actually sit down and watch this stuff.
Well, we'll continue to do it, and we will continue to chat next Saturday, same time, same place, 9 a.m. to noon on 95.7 The Game. Dan, it's been fun. I feel like the last 3 hours have been a breeze.
And your roommate there, big chick, will
He's not my roommate.
Will come home a little bit sooner because me, I'm the parent in all this. Maybe you'll come home sooner than 3 a.m. and somewhat sober.
As long as I'm ready to rock at all times, okay?
True.
I've been caffeinated all day, and now I'm going to go take a nap. But thank you very much, Dan, for joining us. For Carter Chickering, for my co-host, Dan Devone, my name is Evan Giddings, saying so long. We'll talk to you next weekend, Saturdays on 95.7 The Game. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everyone. Have a good time.
So, what are you reading?
I'm checking out the ratings on the new TVs, and it looks like Samsung, LG, and Sony got the best scores.
Just like last year. What about those new high dynamic range TVs?
They got the highest scores of all, but their prices are really high.
Did you check online?
Yeah, their prices were about the same.
Well, there's one place where we can get a hot deal on those top-rated models.
Where?
At Video Only. Check out the ratings on TV stores.
I see. Video Only scored better than the others.
So, if you want the best deal on the best TVs,
then we should take our TV ratings and head over to top-rated Video Only.
At Video Only, you won't find huge stores with refrigerators or microwaves, but you will find the best deals on top-rated TVs, soundbars, and monitors. Shop around. Just make sure you visit Video Only, because if you don't,
you'll be sorry.
In Mountain View, San Mateo, Union City, Dublin, and San Rafael. Video Only.
Dine at the Copper Skillet for a tasty bite. Family owned since 1973 and a Bay Area local in downtown Martinez. Serving classic American diner food the right way. Juicy burgers, hearty omelets, and breakfast all day. The Copper Skillet, where hungry people come to eat.
Is switching your wireless service to Total by Verizon easy? Totalmente. Now you can get 50% off any unlimited data phone plan. That's one line for only $25 a month, and you keep the phone you love. Hurry, this is a limited time offer. So find a store or switch suavemente at totalbyverizon.com. Offer ends July 31st, 2024. Promo subject to cancellation after 12 months. Available exclusively online and in Total by Verizon stores. Requires a compatible unlocked device and SIM. See totalbyverizon.com for device compatibility and additional details. Taxes and fees may apply.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you're always looking for ways to position your operation to create opportunities and move on them faster. With Bank of America, you get access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful, you'll make every move matter. Locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2024 Bank of America N.A.
At Lawton Skilled Nursing and Rehabilitation Center, we know how hard it is to care for loved ones. Come and check out the 5-star facility named one of the top skilled nursing facilities by U.S. News and World Report. Visit us at lifegen.net or call Dan Daly at 415-566-1200.
Want more speed? Well, Xfinity just increased their internet speeds, and they're faster than ever. It's time to get more out of your internet with faster speeds from Xfinity. Now through June 21st, get 150 megabit Xfinity internet for only $19.99 a month for 12 months with a 1-year contract. That's double the speed for the same great price. Click, call, or visit a store today. Requires paperless billing and auto-pay with stored bank account. Restrictions apply. Equipment, taxes, and other charges extra. After promo, regular rates apply. Actual speeds vary.
Ready to upgrade your savings? Well, here's your chance to earn 5.64% APY with no minimum deposit and no minimum balance. First NorCal Credit Union's first-class money market account pays 5.64 APY on the first $5,000. Now you can earn the max and still have access to your money. Visit firstnorcalcu.org to learn more. Must qualify for membership. APY equals annual percentage yield. Rates subject to change without notice. Restrictions apply. Insured by NCUA.
If you owe $25, $50, even $100,000 or more in credit card debt, medical bills, or other unsecured debt, you may be feeling overwhelmed, filled with anxiety, even embarrassed. Well, stop. That's right, stop. It's not your fault. Life happens. People lose their jobs, get sick, get divorced, and many other things that can lead to financial stress. So, don't feel bad about it. Do something about it. And join the over 300,000 people who worked with accredited debt relief to pay off their debt. A company with an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. They're here to help people just like you. Get out of debt faster and feel the relief that comes with financial freedom. So stop delaying. Make the call to learn how much they can save you. Time and money. There's no pressure, no obligation, just a call. Call 877-272-8115. 877-272-8115. That's 877-272-8115. Program and services not available in all states.
You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM in HD1 San Francisco on Odyssey Sports Station. Always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch, and YouTube. Powered by First NorCal Credit Union.
Who's like, it's just like all of it. Like, I just, like, I don't, like, I really, honestly, like, I'm not saying this just to be, have a different take.